Hello, Fantastics. It's Mr. Clintastik, continuing my set review of Murders at Karlov Manor for Magic the Gathering. If you enjoy my content, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. It helps the channel to grow in the future. Let's begin. So, I've already gone through the white, blue, and black color cycles. So far, I still think white for limited is going to be my go to color. It just looks really consistent, really strong. It doesn't seem to have a lot of things that require other necessary pieces. It just kind of does its thing. Blue blue has some interesting cards. I think there was one in particular I liked a lot. Was an artifact that kind of made those disguised creatures. I think it was this cryptic coat. And then there's also a one mana card that can make like four fours as a case. So I really like that. And then Black had a few pieces like Massacre Girl. Massacre Girl, the new one, looks really excellent, especially in limited. Menace creatures you control have wither. So yeah, if you want to see all that, I'm gonna break up the videos and set them up by color. That'll be coming out soon. And then as the season goes on, I'll probably do like like after a month update or something like that. Maybe after a week, two, something along those lines. Whatever works. But anyways, let's get back to it. We're going over red today. First on the list is Expedited Inheritance, 2 red enchantment. Mythic, whenever a creature is dealt damage, its controller may exile that many cards from the top of their library. They may play those cards until the end of their next turn. So, this review focuses on limited, which includes two formats, draft and sealed. It doesn't include standard, historic, alchemy, anything like that. It's only draft or sealed. And that's how I'm evaluating the cards. I'm evaluating the cards on a 0 to 5 number scale, 0 being totally unplayable, 5 being like a slam dunk. You're going to want to pick this up every time. So I just wanted to give kind of a reminder on how I'm evaluating the cards. And this, for instance, a 2 mana, whenever a creature is dealt damage, its controller may exile that top cards from their library. They may play those cards until the end of their next turn. That's just not that great. It comes down on turn 2. You miss the creature play, you miss the removal spell play. It just doesn't look that great to me. In most situations, I'm not even gonna pick it. It'll have to like just fall in my lap. I'll put it at like a 1 because I don't even know how much this is gonna give you your card value. And then on top of that, it kind of works in your opponent's favor as well. Whenever a creature, not your creature, a creature is dealt damage, its controller may exile that many cards from top of their library. Now maybe you can play it in a way that it's like, okay, cool, you done milled someone out using this. But man, that's really big brain, and if it takes really big brain plays to function, I don't necessarily agree that it's even on the basic common level. So I'm gonna put it at a 1, even at mythic, which is trash. That's not good to me. If I have to rate something, a mythic card, as a 1 in limited, like what are you doing? What are you doing? Anyway, Incinerator of the Guilty, 6 mana for generic and 2 red. Creature dragon is also mythic. Flying trample. When Incinerator of the Guilty deals combat damage to a player, you may collect evidence X. When you do, Incinerator of the Guilty deals X damage to each creature and each planeswalker that player controls. It's a 6. So a 6 mana 6/6 flying trampler. I like the stats at least. I'll put this at least at a 3. This is on curve appropriately. It's not just a 6/6 for 6. That's not what's going on. You have a 6 mana 6/6 flying with trample. So I would put this at like a strong 3.5. The mana cost is what's kind of keeping it from being a 4 to me. Um, and honestly, I'm not a big fan of the collect evidence mechanic. But with this one, since it's collect evidence X, I don't know. It's a lot of potential to do a board wipe too. I'm gonna just leave this at like a 3.5, maybe even a 3.75. It gets really close to that 4.0 range. The only thing that's kind of keeping it from that for me is the mana cost. I want it to be a 4. I think it's a slam dunk. especially being flying trample and having this collect evidence ability. I think it's great, but I don't know if it's a four until I see how often it actually comes and impacts the board, or if it's going to be sitting in someone's hand 90% of the time. So I'm gonna leave that at 3.5, 3.5 to 3.75. Next we have Enrog's Ansrog's Rampage. It makes you want to say it weird. Ansrog's Rampage. 5 mana, 3 generic, 2 blue, sorcery. Destroy all artifacts you don't control, then exile top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts that were put into graveyards from the battlefield this turn. You may put a creature card exiled this way onto the battlefield. It gains haste. Return it to your hand at the beginning of your next end step. I don't know why they want to give us these just chapter books to read for cards. A 5 mana red spell to only destroy artifacts isn't good. Exile top card X cards of the library where X is the number of artifacts put in graveyards from the battlefield this turn. Eh, eh. You may put a creature card exile this way onto the battlefield. Eh. I'm gonna have to. Is this totally unplayable? Like, is there ever a time in limited that you're gonna actually be like, oh, I'm so happy to see this? And it's destroy all artifacts you don't control. So your opponent just runs zero artifacts. This doesn't. I gotta put it at zero. Like I was gonna leave it at one and be like, there's gonna maybe be a time or two you see this and be like, okay, cool. No, like none of this just lines up right. This is definitely something that might want to see some constructed play, but limited, no, thank you. I gotta give Ansrog's Rampage a zero, especially with the name too. I don't even like the name. Next we have Krenko's Buzz Crusher, 4 mana, 2 generic, 2 red, artifact creature, Insectopter, rare. Flying Trample, great. When it ETBs, for each player destroy up to one non basic land that player controls. For each land destroyed this way, its controller may search the library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. It's a 4/4. So, I mean, this is actually really solid. It definitely bypasses the average scale of being a 3. It's well above average. A 4 mana 4/4 flying with trample is great. ETBs can blow up a non basic land. Don't know how relevant that's gonna be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. 4 mana 4/4 with flying and trample is great. I'm gonna put it at like a 3.5 because I mean, you run a bunch of these. What are they gonna do? Excuse me. What are they gonna do? So I'm happy with this, and it's easier to play than that dragon. I leave it at 3.5, and as I see it in play, it might go up. Next, we have Case of the Crimson Pulse, 3 mana, 2 generic, and a red. When this case ETBs, discard a card, then draw 2 cards. For 3, okay. We have that ability for cheaper in other colors, but you know, it's whatever. To solve, you have no cards in hand, okay. And at the beginning of your upkeep, discard your hand, draw 2 cards if it's solved. Hmm. So yeah, I'm not too big a fan of this. It gives you some kind of card advantage, but it's 3 mana for that card advantage, which in blue you'll get your divination for 3 and draw 2 cards. But you gotta discard, and then to solve it, you gotta have no cards in hand. Mm, mm, 3 mana, up to 4 cards drawn. I'll put it at 3. I think this is playable. You know, 3 mana, discard a card, draw 2 cards, solid. And then on the back end, it does it again. Basically, you don't have to even discard, you just gotta have an empty hand. I'll give it a 3. It might be a 3.25 as far as how many cards it can actually draw you. 3. It's drawing you 4 cards for 3 mana on one play. A 4 for 1. At the very most, the 4 for 2 because you're discarding that card. I like it. I like it. I give it 3.25. Next, we have Lamplight Phoenix, 3 mana, 1 generic and 2 red. Phoenix flying. When it dies, you may exile it, collect evidence 4. If you do, return Lamplight Phoenix to the battlefield tapped. It's a 3/3. 3/3 for 3 is solid, especially flying. Puts it at least a 3 for me. Then, if it dies, you can collect evidence 4, and that's not too expensive. It's relatively cheap. If you do, return it to the battlefield tapped. I like this card a lot. Um, I mean, the only thing it's missing is trample, right? It has a recursive element. The only issue is if it's already in the yard, you're not going to be able to return it ever unless you have a way to get it back from the yard. And I don't think I noticed that many ways to get creatures back from the yard in black for cheap. I think there was one that was like a 4 mana one that you can reduce to 2, and I think there was like a 5 mana one. But there's not like a lot of ways to get creatures back. So this is going to be really solid if you can get the evidence off. And I'm going to put it at 3.5. If evidence proves itself to be good, this could be a solid 4 card. Just a solid 3/3 for 3 flying that you want every time. And if the format's aggressive enough, it might even go up. But I'm going to leave this at a 3.5 for now. It's great. And if the evidence mechanic really pops off, I think this is a solid 4. Next we have Fugitive Codebreaker, 2 mana, a red and a generic. Goblin Rogue with Prowess and Haste. It also has Disguise 6. When it's turned face up, discard your hand, draw 3 cards. It's a 2/1. Hey, okay. I'm gonna so a 2 mana 2/1 with Prowess and Haste is already like so good to me. That's already so that's 3 all day at least. 3 is kind of like my baseline for a average card. You can just go on and put it in every deck, and you're not gonna be worried too much. This is a card that can help you win games by itself. And so at that point, I'm looking at what else does it give me. The mana cost great. 2/1's not excellent, but it has prowess and haste, so you can just slam it down turn 2, start beating face. You play your instants and sorceries, it pumps up. A lot of combat trick potential. And then if you happen to reach 6 mana, you flip it face up. You have no cards in hand, you draw 3 cards. Like, that's really excellent. 6 mana to draw 3 cards is not great per se, but on a 2 mana body, I think it's great. I'm gonna put this at 3.5 as well. And if the 6 mana ability turns proves to be good, it's probably a 4. You run 4 or 5 of these guys, you're not gonna be like upset, are you? You could get overran, but you're hasting out boys, really shaking them up. I'm gonna put it at 3.5 for now. Next, we have Connecting the Dots. 2 mana, 1 generic, and a red enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library face down. You can pay 2, a 1 generic, and a red. Discard your hand. Sacrifice Connecting the Dots. Put all cards exiled with Connecting the Dots into their owner's hand. Mm. This is okay. I gotta put it at a 2 though. By itself, it does nothing. It's not drawing you cards. It's not ETBing and putting a card in your hand or nothing like that. It does take support, but it has a lot of upside, a lot high ceiling. You drop this on turn 2, and say you happen to start swinging on turn 3. You swing on turn 3, boom, exile top card. Swing on turn 4, boom, exile top card. Swing on turn 5, boom, exile top card. So there's 3 cards, and for 2 mana, by turn 5. If everything you have to get a creature out on turn 1. That's a lot of build up for me. I'll have to really see it at work. Right now, I'll give it a 2 out of respect because I like the cut of his jib. But other than that, I don't know if this card really deserves any play. We shall see. I'll give it a 2 for now. Next, we have Pyrotechnic Performer, 2 mana, 1 generic, and a red. Viashino Assassin with Disguise 1. It's probably the cheapest disguise I've seen so far. That's nice. Whenever it ETBs or another creature you control is turned face up, that creature deals power damage equal to its power to each opponent. That's a 3/2. Yeah, yep. This is what you want for your disguise builds. You know, first off, this says whenever Pyrotechnic Performer or another creature you control is turned face up. You play this on 3, turn it face up for 1 mana, deal 3 damage to the opponent on a 3/2 body. That's not bad. That's really solid. Like the red cards so far have been kind of smacking. Like there've been a couple of duds. Like I find Rampage as a dud, and the connecting dots is kind of like eh. But so far so good. I gotta give this a solid 3.5. Like, and it could be better than that. A 2 mana 3/2 is not bad. You play it for 3, you're flipping them over. That's 3 damage to the dome. You have 3 of these in your build. That's 9 damage potentially to the face. Almost half of your opponent's life. It's rare, so it's not gonna be seen like left and right. But if you happen to get to play 2 of these, 6 damage to the face on a 3/2 body that's swinging in, you're gonna be happy with those stats. I'm giving that a 3.5, and if it plays out well, I will bump it up to a 4. Next, we have Krenko Baron of 10 Street, 3 mana, 2 generic, and a red goblin. Has haste. You can sacrifice an artifact, put a 1/1 counter on each goblin you control, and whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay a red. If you do create a 1/1 red goblin creature token, it gains haste until end of turn. It's a 3/3. Another solid card. It gets automatic 3 status. It's a 3/3 for 3 with haste. So honestly, I'll probably put this as like a 3.5 already, because that's along the same lines of the Code Breaker, and the Code Breaker is a goblin. Granted, they're both rare. It's not going to be easy for you to kind of pair these guys together, but that's something I would love to see. Then, whenever you sack your clue tokens, for instance, you can pay a red, and if you do, you create a 1/1 red goblin token. And granted, as you see, this isn't limited to once per turn. So, this can kind of, with some support, generate your value. And then, not only that, while you're sacrificing those clue tokens, you'll be putting 1/1 counters on your goblins. I think that's really efficient. I'm gonna give this card a 3.5 as well, and I think anyone that can bring this deck together, bring the clues, investigate or whatnot, and throw a couple goblins. We don't know how many we have just yet. This is my first time reviewing Red, but if you get enough, this is definitely a 4, maybe even a 4.5. This is the Goblin Lord you'll want to have in your limited Goblin deck. Next, we have Knife. It is a 1 red artifact clue equipment. As long as it's your turn, equipped creature gets 1/0 and has first strike. You can sack it, draw a card, equip 2. I'll give it a 1. I don't think this is excellent at all. Was black worse? Whenever an equipped creature dies, lose. Yeah, it was kind of worse. At least this gets first strike. Probably need a cough drop. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so at least with Knife, the creature gets first strike, which I think is better than just losing a life when the creature dies. I'm gonna still put it at a 1. I don't think this is overly excellent. It's gonna depend on what deck you want to run it in. So yeah, I think so far white still has the best one. The For me, the ability to tap down the opponent's creatures for 3. I'll run 2 or 3 of these because it's giving me so much value. But that could be wrong. Anyways, let's continue to Vengeful Tracker. There we go. It's a 2 mana, 1 generic, and a red human detective. Whenever an opponent sacrifices an artifact, Vengeful Tracker deals 2 damage to them. It's a 2/2. Decent stats. It really depends on your opponent. If they're not running clues, which I don't know why they wouldn't be, It's not going to do too much to him, and if this misses those opportunities, it's just a 2-2. I'm going to rate this as just a 2-2 for 2, which is okay, like a 2.5, right? It's like, it's just not exciting. Is it going to win you games? Probably not. You know, a bunch of Bears won't win the game, but it's almost there. Um, I don't necessarily want to give it a 3 because it's not something I'm gonna look at in most cases and be like, this is what I want. But I think it's kind of up there. It's a little bit below the average card for me because I think it's just a 2-2 for 2 and not necessarily like a 2-2 with menace or something like that. Give it that evasiveness it needs, and I think the text on it is just like okay. It's too conditional. I'm gonna give it a 2.5 for now and see if it actually does some work during the season. Next, we have Frantic Scapegoat, one red creature goat with haste. I see you, red, with the haste. Thank you, thank you. When Frantic Scapegoat ETBs, you suspect it, so it has haste, menace, and can't block. When one or more other creatures ETBs under your control, if Frantic Scapegoat if Frantic Scapegoat is suspected, you may suspect one of the other creatures. If you do, Frantic Scapegoat is no longer suspected. Okay, I kind of like this. You play it on turn one. It instantly is a 1/1 with menace. That's kind of solid to me. It kind of gives you opportunities to peck in when you may not have the opportunity typically with a 1/1. And in addition, you can give menace to another creature. I think that's solid. I'm gonna put it at 2.5. I don't think it's the card that's gonna be helping you to really like win games, but it could be. It does damage, but having a bunch of these in your build is gonna not do a lot. Kind of underpowered with the cool ability. So I'm gonna give it a 2.5 and see how it plays out in the season. Next, we have Torch the Witness, X generic and a red sorcery. Torch the Witness deals twice X damage to target creature. If excess damage was dealt to that creature, investigate. Kind of wish this was an instant speed spell. I like the fact that if you go higher than the toughness of the creature, you get to draw a card off of this. I think this is definitely at least a 3. It deals twice X damage, so you play this on turn 2. You can deal 2 damage. You play it on turn 3. You can deal 4 damage. You play it on turn 4. You can deal 6 damage. So this is scaling up pretty nicely and typically going to draw you the card you want. I'm putting this at 3.5. I think this is really solid removal. It's going to clean up most of the things on the board that you want to clean up and has the potential to replace itself with that artifact. So I'm going to give this a 3.5 and it could go up depending on how lacking we are in solid removal. Next we have Caught Red-Handed, 5 mana for generic and a red instant. This spell can't be countered. You want to keep your eye out for those can't be countered spells because it'll get around those ward abilities. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn, and you suspect it. It has menace and can't block. I don't like this. I think it's playable. Don't get me wrong. I think there's gonna be people like, okay, cool. I'll curve top with this. Take their biggest threat, their 5 mana, 4 mana threat. Swing in with it, win the game. 5 mana for a steal spell just isn't that great for me. Then if you can't win the game or get rid of the creature, you're leaving them with a menace threat, which isn't that great. I'm putting this at a 1, and that's just saying it's playable. I feel like an opponent is going to use this against me and I'm be very frustrated, but it's going to be on me for either building a bad deck or putting myself in a position for this to take over. Next, we have Bullrack Clan Bosher, 6 mana, 4 mana, 4 generic, 2 red. Cyclops Warrior with double strike and trample. Has disguise 5, it's a 3/2. I'll put it at a. I'm gonna put it at a two. I, this is one of those cards you want to say is a slam dunk. It can be a three automatically and scale up from average. But if it's on paper just a 6 mana 3/2 with double strike and trample, I'm not too happy about that. It's so easy to get rid of. It's not easy to get to the board. You got to pay three, then flip it for five. I'm gonna give Borak a two. I think people can play it, but I'm not overly excited about it. And if it beats my face in, I clearly let something slide. Next, we have Reckless Detective. 2 mana, 1 generic, and a red creature devil detective. When it attacks, you may sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. If you do, draw a card, and Reckless Detective gets 2/0 until end of turn. It's a 0/3. Hmm. I like the fact that it can kind of give you some card selection. It attacks you, sacrifice an artifact, or draw a card. The issue is a lot of the artifacts that you're going to have access to can already sacrifice to draw a card. They're clue tokens in most cases. Um, or you can discard a card, which is fine. You're just kind of replacing that card. So, and then on top of it, they didn't even give this one. They could have gave it 1 point of toughness. It left it at 0. So in most cases, it's not even going to block well for you on defense. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of this card. I'm gonna put it at one. If you want to run three of these and try to pull something together, cool. It might go up to a two. But other than that, I don't think this card is that great at all. Leaving it at one. Next, we have Cornered Crook, 5 mana, 4 generic, and a red. Vishino Warrior. When it ETBs, you may sack an artifact. When you do, it deals 3 damage to any target. It's a 5/4. I gotta put this at two as well. It's not always gonna get you that ability. That's what's really keeping it at two. 5 mana, 5/4 with no additional like stats like menace or trample or nothing isn't exciting. It has the additional ability to deal 3 damage anywhere. I don't think that's gonna come into play too much. I gotta leave it at a two. Case of the Burning Mass, 3 mana, 1 generic, 2 red. When this case ETBs, it deals 3 damage to target creature an opponent controls. To solve, 3 or more sources you control dealt damage this turn. So you gotta have like 3 creatures on the board. Might pair well with red. I mean with white. I think white wanted the 3 creatures on the board. And then solved, sacrifice this case, exile the top 3 cards of your library. Choose one of them. You may play that card this turn. So a 3 mana deal 3 damage to target creature is meh, and it has the potential to draw you 1 card but lose you 2. I'm gonna put this at a two. I don't think it's the worst thing ever. You got it. It's okay, cool. I can ping your creature off, and if I happen to have 3 creatures on the board and they deal damage, I get to get a little card selection. Cool. But it all got to line up. So I'm gonna give Case of the Burning Mass a two. It's not something I'm excited to play. Ooh wee. Sinus is going crazy. All right. Next we have Concealed Weapon, 2 mana, 1 generic, and a red artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+0. It has Disguise 3, and when it's turned face up, attach it to target creature you control. Equip it for 2. I don't think I've seen many disguised equipment. This might be the first one, or the first disguise anything that was a non-creature, or that wasn't cloaked. Still, yeah, +3/0 isn't bad. You play this, you play it for 3. So this is an artifact that can be a creature until you need it to be an equipment. That's sneaky. That's sneaky. And you can flip it. Say they block with it, or they block against it. You're swinging in with your 2 creatures. They block, and you're gonna lose your creature in combat. You flip this turn it into an artifact, attach it to the creature, you're swinging in for 3 extra damage. I like this. I really like this actually. An artifact, an artifact that's also a creature that, yeah. I'm gonna give this a 3. I gotta see it at work to really know. I might even want to give it a 3.25, but I think this has potential to really be a blowout in some games. Like heavy. Like you run 2 of these and you're dealing, say you deal your 2 damage with the creature, deal 2 damage, or you're holding off your opponent because they don't want to trade. And then next thing you know, you got your flyer in the air. They're thinking they're trading with your 2/2, and boom, you get no. I got 3 extra damage in the air. Deal with it. I'm gonna give this a 3.25 and see how it works out in the field. I'm really excited about that card. Next, we have Harried Dronesmith, 4 mana, 3 generic, and a red human artificer. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 colorless Doctor artifact token with flying. It gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step. It's a 2/3. A 4 mana 2/3 isn't great. I like that it generates that token every turn. That was awesome until I saw that it sacrifices. Until I saw that it sacrificed, I don't really like this. I think this is like maybe a 2. Now, say you run multiple copies. On turn 4, you drop it. Turn 5, you drop it. Turn 6, you drop it. Every turn you got 2/3s on the ground. Granted, they can probably blow through those. But if not, you're generating 3 flyers just beep, 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 beep. And they can't really do anything about it. They're artifact tokens. So they're going to trigger your whenever an artifact dies or something like that. Or you can utilize them with your other cards to synergize, sack an artifact. Because thing is, you don't want to sacrifice your clue tokens for the additional abilities. You want to sacrifice things that are going to sacrifice anyways. Something like this. So I'm going to give it a 2. I don't think it's totally the worst, but I'll have to see. Like a lot of the cards, got to see how it plays out. 4 mana 2/3 isn't great. A 4 mana 2/3 that brings out a 1/1 flyer that can't block is better, but still a little underwhelming. Next, we have Convenient Target, a red enchantment aura, enchant creature. ETB, suspect enchanted creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. And you can pay 3, 2 generic, and a red. Return Convenient Target from your graveyard to your hand. Huh? It's playable. I'll give it at least a 1. It's really cheap. And it comes back from the yard, and it gives menace. That's a lot of stuff. I'm gonna give it a 2. It's not gonna win the game by itself. That's not gonna happen. But at the same time, I'd probably be happy to have one of these in my build, or maybe even 2, 3 if I know I want to give my creatures menace in 1/1. I get a bunch of 1/1 flyers or something like that. Slap this on there, boom. It's only 1 mana to play initially too. That's not bad. I'm gonna give this a 2, and it could go to a 2.5 if I start. If this be a nuisance, yeah. I don't think it's ever gonna be just average for me though. Not in limited. Next we have Crime Novelist, 3 mana, 2 generic, and a red Goblin Bard. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Crime Novelist and add a red. It's a 1/3. So you sacrifice your clue token, you get to put a 1/1 counter on this and get a red mana. It's a 3 mana 2/3. 3 mana 1/3. Feel like I gotta evaluate this at 3 mana 1/3 status because you gotta play it and then do something else. Granted, if it pairs with this card here, it doesn't really. 3 mana 1/3 is not exciting. The fact that it can pump up is great, but I don't know how easy that's gonna be. I'm gonna put this at a 2. The Crime Novelist. Next we have Expose the Culprit. 2 mana, 1 generic, and a red. Choose one or both. You can turn target face down, creature face up, Or you can exile any number of face up creatures you control with disguise in a face down pile. Shuffle the pile, then cloak them. To cloak a card, put it onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature with Ward 2. Turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. I think this is one of the most interesting cards I've seen. It's along the lines of just interesting. You can choose one or both. Now, a lot of the morph cards or the disguise cards cost more than 3 mana to flip. They generally cost like 5 mana, something like that. You have your cheaper ones, but not so much. It's typically like 3 to 5. This can do it for 2 mana. Like you play your best morph creature on turn 3. Turn 4, you're flipping it for 2 mana instead of whatever it was before. I like that a lot. This is already for the set. I know I'm like, creatures are typically what get the 3 point to me or removal going forward. I think this is really strong. In addition, you can exile any number of face up creatures you control with disguise in a face down pile, shuffle that pile, then cloak them. So it also operates like remove, like a protection spell. They're targeting your creature, or they're running one of those board wipes from white or black, or even tap down one from blue. You exile all your creatures with this. You don't have to pay exit or nothing, just for 2 mana. You exile all your creatures that were face up, and you bring them back face down, and you can flip them when you feel like. I think there's a lot of potential in this card. I don't think it's the card that's going to win you the game by itself. Where I would love to give this a 3 rating, I'm going to have to be respectful and give it a 2.75. I don't think it's just like, okay, you gotta have this card in every deck, but I think it's gonna be really exciting when this really pops off. And I think a 2.5 is just right for it. Just the perfect rating. You're not gonna be choosing this over a removal spell, over a solid creature, or nothing like that. But if you're able to slide it into your disguise builds, I think it's gonna be really excellent. Next, we have Suspicious Detonation, 5 mana, 4 generic, and a red sorcery. This spell costs 3 less to cast if you've sacrificed an artifact this turn. The spell can't be countered, and it deals 4 damage to target creature. It's a sorcery. So it can potentially be 2 mana if you've sacked a clue. 2 mana, 4 damage to target creature. I kind of like that. On paper, it's just a 5 mana, 4 damage to target creature, which is pretty boo boo. And that's what I'm going to rate it as. I'm going to give it a 2. I think there's going to be a lot of cases where people can activate the additional ability. I don't think that's going to be extraordinarily tough. But on the front side of the card, just 5 mana, 4 damage is not great. I almost want to slide it down to a 1.5, but if there's not much removal, this is going to be heavily valued. And in addition, it has that can't be countered clause, so it can still deal with those ward creatures. So I think a 2 is right where it needs to be. Next, we have The Chase is On. 3 mana, 2 generic, and a red. Instant target creature gets 3/0 and gains first strike until end of turn and investigate. I like this a lot. I think this is like a 2.5. Target creature gets 3/0 and first strike and investigate. I like the fact that it replaces itself. That's really important to me. 3 mana is kind of overpriced, but 3/0 and first strike, you slap that on a trample boy, you're getting too much value. So yeah, I'm gonna give it 2.5 and see where it goes. Give me just a moment. Random rant. Using the last of something and then not turning it off. I'm like, why do that? why do it? If you use the last of it, be respectful and turn off the device. Rant over. Next, we have Person of Interest, 4 mana, 3 generic, and a red human rogue. When it ETBs, suspected, create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. So a 4 mana 2/2 is not exciting. It makes a 2/2 detective. I kind of wish this was a detective itself, but I guess the thing is this person of interest is the suspect, and it's generating a detective that is following it. So I get it. The flavor of a lot of these spells is really exciting. Um, but in most cases, I'm not trying to run this guy too heavy. Generating 2 bodies cool, but for 4 mana, I'm just not excited. I want to put it at 2. I think I'm gonna leave it at 2 out of respect, but I think this is like a 1.5. Like, not saying it's totally unplayable or nothing like that, but it's just like, no evasion, just creating that one token, starting on turn 4. No, I'm gonna give it a 1.75. I'm just not sold on Person of Interest. Next, we have Rubble Belt Braggart, 5 mana, 4 generic, and a red. Vishino Warrior. When it attacks, if it's not suspected, you may suspect it. Was this suspected? Oh, person interest ETB suspected. So it has menace on it. So it's a 4 mana menace creature, a 4 mana 2/2 with menace that creates you a 2/2 detective. I'll put it at 2 off of that. I forgot the suspect. That definitely bumps it up, but it's not going to go up much higher for me. When it attacks, if it's not suspected, you may suspect it's a 5 mana 5/5 with menace. I think this is solid. I'm gonna give this a 2.5. And it's the mana cost. It's solely the mana cost. 5 mana is really expensive. Say this was 4 mana 4/4 with menace. I probably, or 3 mana 3/3 with menace. If it was a 3 mana 3/3 with menace, this would go to like a 3.5. Sold. But by the time I get to 4 mana and 5 mana and limited, those cards just start losing value immediately. Like, they're not even the average. They have to be, by the time they get to 4 and 5 mana, they have to be so above average at that mana cost for me to even consider them average, because the cost of the spell is so much. So I'm gonna give this 2.5 and see if I see it on the battlefield. Next, we have Innocent Bystander, 2 mana, 1 generic, and a red creature goblin, creature goblin citizen. When it's dealt 3 or more damage, investigate. 2/1. Mm, 2 mana 2/1. I'll put it at 2. It's not terrible, just being that, but it's not exciting. It dies. It leaves a clue token behind, essentially, and that's not always the case, because it could just be blocked by one toughness or one power creature, and you don't get the value. So I'm gonna put this at 2. Which is crazy that it's be- it's below this. Maybe actually I'm gonna bring Rubble Belt Braggart down to a 2 as well, just because of the mana cost. It's too much, and this is a 2 simply because it's just not impacting the board that much. But I almost think it's easier. It's way easier to play than this Viashino Warrior. I'm gonna give this 2.25. Still learning my ratings. Still learning my ratings and how I want to categorize things. Like, I can't in full conscious say that this gets a higher rating than Innocent Bystander, because Innocent Bystander is only 2 mana. It's gonna start impacting the board way sooner than the Braggart. So yeah, I'm gonna give this like a 2.25 and roll. Next, we have Offender at Large, 5 mana, 4 generic, and a red with Disguise 5. When it ETBs or is turn face up to 1 target creature gets 2/0 until end of turn. It's a 5/4. I'm giving this a 2. These 5 mana creatures are not looking good to me. They're just not looking good. And I get it, they have Disguise or whatnot. The flips aren't even that great. The flips aren't even that great. I'm gonna give Offender at Large a 2 and see if anyone who's playing this card. That's what I want to know. If you playing this card, let me know in the comment section below that hey, yeah, your Bastion card I think looks hot because I want to know. Next we have Red Herring. I love the art on this. I haven't mentioned the art much in this set, but this is really cool. 2 mana, one generic, and a red clue fish artifact creature has haste. We've been seeing a few creatures with haste. This is probably the third one. That's solid. When it attacks each combat if able, you can sack it, draw a card, 2/2. This is great. I'm gonna put it at a 3, and probably even a 3.25 and growing. You have 3 of these in your deck. You're not too upset. You're playing it on turn 2 consistently. Um, the fact that it has to attack each combat is a little disgusting. But if you're running these give first strikes or bring back to the battlefield or anything like that, you're going to be fairly happy to. It's not like tricking your opponent, but they're like, okay, they have to attack. So they're thinking, okay, cool, I'm going to block this for free. And it's like, nah, that was all a part of my schemes, you dolt. So I'm going to give this a 3.25. I think this is way better than your average card. And if it plays out right with support spells, I think this could be a 3.5 and growing. The red cards with haste are looking really good. Next, we have Goblin Mask Maker, a red creature goblin citizen for 1. Whenever Goblin Mask Maker attacks, face down spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. It's a 1/2. And it's a goblin. So, red has a little goblin theme going on. Y'all know we got these disguise situations going on. So, if you happen to be in that red aggro pump type situation, a few of these, say you attack with 3 of these. Theoretically, you attack with 3, you can literally play all of your disguise creatures from your hand for free. It's not restricting it to the has to at least cost 1. It's a generic mana. You swing with 3 of these Goblin Mask Makers. For that turn, all of your disguise creatures come to the board for free. Even if that's not, then that's optimal. That's primo. Even if you only have 2 of these, you're putting them all out for 1. So if you have 3 mana out, you put 3 creatures out for 1. Even if you're doing it with 1 creature, if you have 4 mana, you're putting out 2 of your morph creatures. This is really solid. I'm liking this a lot. It's a 1 mana 1/2, so even the butt looks pretty good. Goblins look solid. I'm gonna give this like a 2.75. I wanna give it a 3, but the fact that you do need those like supportive disguise creatures to make this go up in value, I'm like by itself it's flimsy. So for now, I'm gonna give it a 2.5. I think it needs the right shell, but the shell should not be easy or should not be difficult to compose. I'm gonna give it a 2.5. And it can also go in Goblin decks too. So I think there's just gonna be a few places that you see Goblin Mask Maker. Next we have Gearbane Orangutan. 3 mana, 2 generic, and a red creature ape. Reach. When it ETBs, choose 1. Destroy up to 1 target artifact or sack an artifact. If you do, put 2/1/1 counters on Gearbane Orangutan. It's a 3 mana 2/2. That can be a 3 mana 4/4 potentially. And it has reach. Blah, blah. 3 mana 2/2 is not that great. 3 mana 2/2 that potentially destroys a clue or something along those lines is okay, I guess. You can sacrifice a token or an artifact or whatever and make it a 4/4, 3 mana 4/4. I'm gonna put this at 2.75. It's okay. Honestly, it's probably a 3. If this was a 3 mana 3/3, I think it would be a 3, especially because of the abilities. But if it's just a 3 mana 2/2 with reach, it's under exciting. I'm gonna have to put it at by itself. I had to put it at 2.75. Next we have Felonious Rage, a red instant, Target creature you control gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. When that creature dies this turn, create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. Okay, I can put this at 2. It's not winning games by itself. It doesn't give first strike or anything like that. It only gives haste and 2/0. I think the incremental damage on some of these pump spells is going to be really relevant to just drive through and win the game. And it leaves behind a creature too in the case that that creature dies. I like that a lot. Red's going to probably want to run this heavy, especially since it already has like this pseudo haste theme. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 2. Next we have Galvanize, 2 mana, 1 generic and a red. Galvanize deals 3 damage to target creature. If you've drawn 2 or more cards this turn, Galvanize deals 5 damage to that creature instead. It's an instant. So on paper, it's just a 2 mana deal 3 damage. I think that's great. That's a 3 in my head. 2 mana to deal 3 damage is great. And if you happen to draw 2 more cards, it can scale up to 5. And drawing cards is not a bad thing. You want to do that. So I'm gonna put this at a 3. It doesn't deal with everything. Like, it doesn't deal with everything, but it deals with enough things for the value that I think this is something you want to run pretty much every time you get a chance to. Next we have Demand Answers, 2 mana, 1 generic and a red. Instant as additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact, or discard a card. Draw 2 cards. I really like this because it gives you the option. You know, you have like Tormenting Voice. Tormenting Voice, you have to discard a card to draw 2 cards. You know, and you have spells that be like, oh, sacrifice an artifact to draw cards or whatnot. But with this, you get the option to do it, and you get the option to do it at instant speed. So if they happen to target your artifact for whatever reason, you can sack it. I like this a lot. I'm gonna give it a 2.5. I'm gonna give it a 2.5. I think in a lot of cases, you're gonna in your red decks, you're gonna want to have 2 copies of this, maybe 3, maybe a little excessive, but this is solid, solid. And then Shock. Gotta give Shock the standard 3. It's a 1 mana, deal 2 damage to any target. You know, it's not gonna deal with every creature in the game, but it's gonna deal with enough things to make you happy, I believe, and it can finish off the opponent for 2. Did the other one do that? Nope. Galvanize only targets creatures at that. So, yeah. Overall, I feel like Red has a lot to offer. I feel like Red started out pretty strong. No, it didn't. It started out with Expedited Inheritance, which was not good. It started off decently strong with Incinerator, being a 6 mana 6/6 flying trample. That's exciting to hear, but not too sure how it's going to play out. Into the Rampage, into the Buzz Crutcher. I guess it was really when we started getting to like Trample Flyer here, 4 cards for 1 card or whatever. A recursive 3/3 flyer. That's, prowess haste. When we started getting into those kind of creatures and spells, we started seeing some better options. But the mythic option was not exciting. This mythic option, Incinerator, is somewhat exciting, but I'm like, I feel like there's going to be a lot of cards in the pack that I need to pick over this. Whereas this would be sitting in my hand for, I don't know, let's say ever. There's going to be other cards that don't look as exciting, but are going to play way better for the mana cost and the situation at hand. So, with red, I think you need to kind of focus on these evasive threats, draw power, recursion, um, yeah, uh, refueling your hand and whatnot, and really just try to go all out. Like, seems like red is ready for a race. You know, red wants to hit the battlefield swinging and then take you out before you can even know what's happening. I like that a lot. Red probably is right behind white for me on the color grid at this moment. We'll just have to see. So I'm gonna take a quick short break, and then I'm gonna be back, and we're gonna cover the green spells. Yeah. All right. If you enjoy my content, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. It really does help the channel to grow. I also appreciate comments. That helps. And if you share, the video to your personal page. I know MTG isn't for everyone, so try to find those MTG lovers in your life. All right. I'll be right back. Ayo! Hello, Fantastics. It's Mr. Clintastik, and I'm back with a Murders at Karlov Manor set review. Now I'll be going over the green spells. Alright, so far we've gone over white, blue, black, and red. I'll be clipping up these videos and having them on my YouTube and Facebook if you would like to review those coming up. So, just a reminder this review is for limited in Magic the Gathering, which means it's focused on draft and sealed events. I've also given a reminder of what draft and sealed is on my channel. So, yeah, my rating system is based on a 0 to 5 rating. Um, 0 being unplayable, 5 being, slam dunk, run this every time. And I don't even know if I've given something a 5 yet. I think one of the higher ratings I've given is 4.5. Um, anyway, turn that off. I think the highest I've given is like 4.5. And if I recall, those were to things like Vindicator and Massacre Girl, which both of those cards, after reading the cards so far, I think those might be closer to a 5. But until the format really gets going, I don't know yet. Those are some of the more powerful creatures I've seen so far. So anyway, like I said, we're getting to green. Let's do it. First, we have Undergrowth Recon. It is a 3 mana, 1 generic, 2 green enchantment mythic. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. I kind of want to put this at a 0. I feel like this is almost unplayable. I haven't seen the lands though, so if you have lands that can come back from the yard, say you run out like something like an Evolving Wilds on turn 1 or 2, you play this on turn 3, on turn 4 you're getting your like mana back every turn to thin your whole build out over the course of the game because it's gonna do it. You're gonna make it so you're not drawing lands every turn. I think this. I don't think this is totally unplayable. I think this is probably a 1. The right person, right time, they're gonna see a lot of work out of this. Me, I'd probably make it look like absolute garbage. So I'm gonna give it a 1 and see if anyone plays out Undergrowth Recon and takes off on me. Next, we have the Pride of the Whole Clade. It is an 11 mana, 10 generic and a green, Crocodile Elk Turtle mythic. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total toughness of creatures you control. It's a defender, and you can pay 2 generic, 2 blue until end turn. Target creature you control gets +1/+0. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw cards equal to its toughness and can attack as though it didn't have a defender. A 215. What are you like? I'm gonna evaluate this on merit alone, just by itself. If you're running this by itself, this is a top card of your library. You have nothing else going on. You better have 11 mana ready and waiting for you to play this spell. Then you're only getting you're getting a 2 power creature for that much. And then even if you pump it, it's only going up to 3. This is a mythic spell. Like I said, this is a limited review. So I'm not too worried about constructed and all that. In the limited format, this is boo boo. If someone beats me with this, I'm gonna be absolutely shocked. Because in my head they're gonna be trying to run a bunch of defenders or big butt creatures to get this out as fast as possible. They're gonna jam this out, and it's like, cool. I like to run flyers anyway. This doesn't have reach. I'm gonna fly right over it. Granted, it can give those other defenders the ability to attack. If they have really low attack like this, I'm still not gonna care. I'm still not gonna care. So the Pride of the Whole Clade, I mean, it's really looking disrespectfully. It's looking like a 1. It's looking really, really bad by itself. Now in other decks, other formats, I think I would have to really think on it. But for what I'm focused on, I'm not playing it. I'm not. I don't think I'll even be fooled into playing or even trying it. 11 mana, get it out my face. I'm putting it at one, and if I and as soon as I see someone play it and I beat them, I'm putting it to zero. I promise you. Next, we have Hide in Plain Sight. 4 mana, 3 generic, and a green. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, cloak 2 of them, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I'm gonna give this a 2.75. Honestly, it might be a 3. It kind of cloaks for free, if that makes sense, or disguises. Disguise is really strong in the fact that these creatures can be anything. If you're able for one card to play out two disguised creatures and get value off of them, that's great. And even then, you can cloak lands. You could turn spells that weren't able to attack prior or block prior. You could turn those into threats. I think this is a 3 at least. It's a 4 mana make two creatures. And I know I didn't want to give the other one, that 4 mana one, I think in red, it made two essentially. This one allows you to look into your library, 5 cards deep, pick the two things you need. It turns something potentially that's not usable into something usable. I think this is it's just way better. So I'm gonna give this a 3. I like this card a lot. Next we have Audience with Tristani. 3 mana, 2 generic, and a green. You create a 0/1 plant token, then draw cards equal to the number of differently named creature tokens you control. I'm gonna put that at 0. Audience with Tristani is not gonna draw you hardly any cards ever. Create a 0/1 plant creature token. If that's the only creature token you got, you're paying 3 mana to draw one card. One. No, no, 0. Don't. I'm probably not playing this at all. It's not even giving me a 1/1. Case of the Locked Hothouse. 4 mana, 3 generic, and a green. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. To solve, you control 7 or more lands. That's probably one of the easier ones. You just play out. Then, if it's solved, you may look at top card of your library anytime. You may play lands and cast creature and enchantment spells from the top of your library. What do you mean? What do you mean? This sounds great. This sounds great. This isn't necessarily drawing your cards, but it's manipulating the top of your library and giving you access to a lot of your spells way sooner. So yeah, I'm a fan of this. Now, granted, it doesn't. If this was search your library for a land, put it on the battlefield, and then to solve you have 7, I like it would be excellent. Then I want to give it a 3, but I think that's an overrating on it. I think that's an overrating just simply based off my initial excitement. The first part of this card is getting you nothing. If you have no land in your hand on that turn 4, no additional, it gets you nothing. And until you have 7 lands, it does nothing. Ah, I'm gonna have to give it a 1. And I think if you build around it, you can take it up to 2. But this isn't winning games by itself. It's just something that kind of like bait cards. They look really good. It's like, oh man, I love these abilities. But when you play different formats and you enjoy different kind of cards, I think that can happen. It's almost like it's a misjudgment because you think you can bring that ability to this format, and it's like well, if you really look at it, it's a 4 mana do nothing card until you have 7 lands on the board. Oh, my feelings. And constructed players who want to build around and build things up and make it work. Sometimes that's not what's gonna happen. Sometimes you're just gonna overhype a card and then be hurt when that card is your top deck and you have nothing to show for it. So that's the rant. I'm gonna put that at a I'm gonna put Case of the Locked Hothouse at 1, and if someone's able to build around it, I think it can go up to a 2. Next, we have Archdruid's Charm, 3 mana, 3 green. It's an instant. Choose one. Search your library for a creature or land. Reveal it. Put it on the battlefield tapped if it's a land. Otherwise, put it into your hand. Shuffle. Instant speed. That's cool. Or you can put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. Okay, cool. Or you can exile target artifact or enchantment. Cool. I'm gonna put this at a. I think I gotta put it at a 3. The mana cost is tough, so it's not like 4 or 5 mana, but it's 3 green specifically, locking you into that green color when most time people want to at least play 2 to 3 colors. I like the fact that it's a fight spell, but once again, that mana cost is really what's killing it. That is what is killing it right now. So yeah, I think it's a 3. I think it's totally playable. You can probably want to run as many of these as you can with as many green sources as you can obtain. So yeah, I'd run it. I just think it's going to be difficult to play with 3 green pips. Next, we have Analyze the Pollen, a 1 green sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may collect evidence 8. You can search your library for a basic land card. If evidence was collected, search your library for a creature or land, reveal that card, put it in your hand, then shuffle. How are y'all feeling about collect evidence? Because collect evidence is coming off really, really trash. It's coming off so trash to me. And for this is collect evidence 8 on a 1 mana spell. So I have to have 8 mana in the graveyard already. I like to recycle. If I can, I'll play my instants and sorceries back from the yard. I'll play my creatures back from the yard. I'm not big on wanting to exile things from my library, at my graveyard. So this isn't exciting to me. Um, it tutored you up a land card, basically, for 1. I mean, it's playable. It's playable. It's not winning you games, but it's playable. And I guess late game it can find you something. I'm gonna give it a 2. I don't think it's totally trash. I'm just not a huge fan of collect evidence. I'll have to just keep saying that. Next we have Axebane Ferox, 4 mana, 2 generic, 2 green. Beast, Death Touch, Haste, solid. Death Touch and Haste. Ward, collect evidence 4. So if they want to target it, they have to collect evidence 4 from their yard. And it's a 4/4. I'm giving this a 4. I mean, and it's not even legendary. Give them all to me. Give me, I don't know, 4 of these guys. And if you give me 4 of these in draft, how do I lose? They have to board wipe me. They do. That's the only way. Which is possible because I will jam all 4 of them out. Death Touch, Haste. The only thing they're missing is like some kind of evasion, but there's first strikes out there. You give something like this first strike, you're blowing people out of the water immediately. You throw trample into the mix, oh my god, that hurt. So I'm gonna give this a 4. I think this is an all-around solid card. I don't think it's average by any means. And I think every time you see it, unless there's a really good removal spell in the pack, this is what you're gonna want to go for. Next we have Sharp-Eyed Rookie. It's 2 mana, 1 generic and a green. Human Detective with Vigilance. When it ETBs under your control, no, whenever a creature ETBs under your control, if its power is greater than Sharp-Eyed Rookie, or its toughness is greater than Sharp-Eyed Rookie, put a 1/1 counter on Sharp-Eyed Rookie and investigate. It's a 2/2, a 2/2 for 2. That if basically any creature comes out with greater anything than it, you get a counter on it, and you get to draw a card with the investigate with the clue. I like it. I think this is like a. I hate to straight up say 4, but it's the mana cost for me. It gives you a lot of value for the cost of the card. 2 mana, 2/2 vigilant is a bear. And I know I was like, well, 2/2 for 2 isn't necessarily going to win you games by themselves. This ability is so easy to fire off. It's just so easy. I, maybe it's a 3.5. Maybe I'm trying to overhype it. But I'm like, you play this on turn 2. there's a great chance on turn 3 and turn 4 you're going to be putting a counter on this, making this a 3/3 into a 4/4, and making 2 clue tokens. Like, I see that so clearly in my mind. I'm going to rank it a 4. I think it's right here along the lines of this Ferox, and I think its mana cost even takes it a little higher. Next, we have a Killer Among Us 5 mana enchantment. Whenever a Killer Among Us enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 human creature token, a 1/1 merfolk creature token, and a 1/1 goblin token. Secretly choose human, merfolk, or goblin. Sacrifice a Killer Among Us, reveal the chosen creature type. If target attacking creature token is the type, put 3/1/1 counters on it and it gains Death Touch until end of turn. I mean, the card is cool. The card is cool. 5 mana is not where I want to be in limited. I tell y'all that. That's been just my echo. 5 mana is not great in limited. It's a 5 mana make 3 creature tokens, and you can pump that creature token by 3. So you, for 5 mana, you're generating 3 power, 6 power. That's how I see it. I'm gonna put it at a 2, simply off mana cost. It's not generating you these overpowered creatures. I think it's fun to consider, and I like the fact that it has that recursive value to it. You bounce this somehow or get to replay it, especially late game. You're frustrating somebody, but overall, I don't think it's the most excellent card. It's probably really a 1 if I think about it. But out of the fact that I would want to see how it works, I give it a 2. Next, we have Rope, green, clue equipment. Equipped creature gets one, well, +1/+2 and has reach, can't be blocked, and you can sack it, draw a card. 1/2 and reach is not that great when you have 1/0 in first strike. Like, I know I'm comparing these by each other, but essentially they're all the same thing. They modify a creature and draw a card. So that's kind of why I feel like that's necessary to compare them to each other. Um, I think this is a little bit better than black. So right now I think it's white. Then for me, white, red, blue, green, then black. I think this is a little bit better than black. No, no, black gives you 2/0. So I think green is probably the worst actually. It doesn't give the most power. I'm gonna give it a 1. It's just not something I'm excited to play or see too often. Next is hard hitting question. A green sorcery, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you or planeswalker you don't control. Very cheap. It scales up over the course of a game. The bigger your creatures, the more damage you're dealing to them, and it's not necessarily in reverse. I'm gonna give this a 2 because it does need assistance. So it's not like the red cards where it's like, well, shock. I gave a 3/2 instantly. It does things by itself. The other card that dealt 3 damage to target creature for 2 does it by itself. This one you gotta have a creature out. The mana cost makes it great, but the assistant it needs brings it below average for me. Next, we have Flourish and Bloomkin, 2 mana, 1 generic, and a green. Plant Elemental. It gets 1/1 for each forest you control. That's incentivizing mono green, I will say. Has Disguise 5, 4 generic, and a green. And when it's turn face up, search your library for up to 2 forests, reveal them, put one on the battlefield tapped, and the other into your hand, shuffle. It's a 0/0. Huh. I'm gonna give this a 2.5. Like, I don't think it's terrible, and this is probably just a 2. It's a 2 mana 1/1 that scales up that you can play out for 3 and flip over and get 2 forests. I think this is a 2 that goes up to at least a 2.5 or a 3 in a mono green deck. But in any other deck, I think it's just a 2. It's not going to perform how you want if you're running 2 or more colors. And I think that's what I have to base this on. We shall see though. I'm going to give Flourishing Bloomkin a 2. Next we have Glint Weaver, a 7 mana 5 generic 2 green spider with reach. When the ETBs distribute 3+1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures, then you gain life equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. It's a 3/3. A 7 mana 3/3. No, I'm not doing it. I'm never doing it. The opponent might do it, you know. Get a 7 mana 6. So it comes out, you get a 7 mana 6/6 with reach and gain life and gain 6 life. People are gonna run it. I'm gonna see this in my face, so I'll give it a 2. But I don't know if I want to run it. I think this is gonna clog up a lot of hands. I wish Arena had a reveal opponent's hand feature so you could see what they had left, so I could kind of know like, oh, I'm glad I didn't run things like this. I'm gonna give it a 2 because I think other players are gonna play it. Its stats are there, which is its stats are there, but and you can give the 3/1/1 counters to something else. It's simply the mana cost is absolute garbage. Next, we have Case of the Trampled Garden, 3 mana, 2 generic, and a green. When this case enters the battlefield, distribute 2+1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures you control. To solve, creatures you control have total power 8 or greater. And then, if it's solved, whenever you attack, put a 1/1 counter on target attacking creature. It gains trample until end of turn. 3 mana, put 2 1/1 counters on 1 or 2 creatures. Okay. To solve, have to have 8 or more power. And if it's solved, it puts a counter every turn. I'm going to put this at a 2. I think this is a build around as well. If you can build around it, great. You got your flyers up there. I always use flyers as an example. But you got your 1/1 flyers up there. You play this on turn 3, make them 3/3 or 2/2 threats. That's not too bad. Getting this to solved point though, I don't know how fast you'll be able to do that, and that's kind of why I'm giving it a 2. If this was really really easy to pull off and it was putting those counters, it would easily be a 2.5. But this isn't going to win the game by itself, and I think that's something too. Like for a card to be really good for me, I kind of need it to win a game almost by itself. So even with that red card that deals 3 damage to a creature for 2, I may need to drop that to like 2.5 or 2.75 because it's not going to win the game. It's going to always just deal with a board state but not win the game. And that's what we're trying to do here. So yeah, I'm going to give this a 2.5 or actually a 2.0 and see how it works. Next we have Sample Collector, 3 mana, 2 generic and a green, Troll Detective. When it attacks, you may collect evidence 3. When you do, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. It's a 2/3. I'll give this a 2.5. It's playable. I don't like collect evidence, but it's alright. Maybe it should have like 2.75. It's just under exciting. It's just under exciting. Next we have Hedge Whisperer, a 1 green elf druid detective. You may choose not to untap Hedge Whisperer during your untap step. Pay 4, 3 generic and a green, tap it, collect evidence 4. Target land you control becomes a 5/5 green plant boar creature with haste. As long as Hedge Whisperer remains tapped, it's still on land. It's a 0/3. I'm gonna give I'm gonna give this 2.5. The first few turns of the game until you get to turn 4, it does nothing. It's just a 0/3 that really does nothing for you. And then it makes a 5/5 green board later. It may be too late by then. I'm gonna give this, and I think I'm gonna give this both 2.5s. Like they're not. They can help you win games eventually, but initially they're just like eh. So yeah, 2.75 here, and a 2.5 for the Hedge Whisper, and that's probably like a 2.0. It just you got to support it and really be able to get that board across the line. And I think that's something else I need to consider in my rating too. Like, yeah, just because you're a creature with power and toughness, like, how good are you at getting over the line? Next, we have Covert Ambusher, 5 mana, 3 generic, 2 green. Worm Horror. When it ETBs or is turn face up, target creature blocks its turn if able. Disguise 5. It's a 4/5. It's just hard to play. 5 mana, 4/5. Not too excited about. You can run it out at 3 and flip it for 5. Still not excited about. I'm going to put it at a 2. Next, we have leg. Get a leg up, a green mana instant until in the turn target creature gets 1/1 for each creature you control and gains reach. That could have been a blowout. If it would have said trample, that would have been a blowout. This can still win games. Like if you're sitting there with 5 creatures and they don't block one of them, and you pump 5 for 1 mana, that's insane. But you still gotta have the build around aspect of it. So I'm gonna put it at a 2. Gotta be able to build around it. Gotta have the right conditions going. Next, we have Aftermath Analyst, 2 mana, Elf Detective. When it ETBs, mill 3 cards. I don't like that. You can sack it for 4, 3 generic and a green. Return all lands from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. I was like, that is loud. Oh, there we go. That is loud. All right. So yeah, um, a 2 mana 1/3 playable. But it makes you mill. But it can help ramp. I'm gonna put this at 2.5. Like some of these cards, creatures that are in this 1 to 3 mana range that can do something. I'm like, it's playable. But at 3, I'm like, okay, this is almost like, just boom, I want this almost every time. I can't necessarily say that with the analyst. I don't want to play this. So I'm going to put this at like a 2 to 2.5. I really have to see it at work. I don't like milling myself either. A lot of this is going to be a biased standpoint for me. Next, we have Pompous Gadabout, 3 mana, 2 generic, and a green. Has hexproof as long as it's your turn, and it can't be blocked with creatures that don't have a name, so it can't be blocked by the disguised creatures. It's a 4/2, a 3 mana 4/2 with hexproof on your turn. You can pump it however you like it. You can do whatever you want and not have to worry about being blown out. And the disguised creature is almost unblockable. Hey, what up, Kyle? Thank you for pulling up. Hope you're doing well today. Oh, it's saying, hold on. Let me fix that. It's saying I'm playing Diablo. I'm not playing Diablo. Technically, I'm not playing anything. Let's see. Let's fix this. I'm not playing Diablo. At this point, we're just chatting. I know it's Magic the Gathering, but I'm not playing it. All right. So yeah, I like Pompous Gadabout. I'm gonna like this is an instant 3 for me. Like it's something and I think that's another thing about being 3 on the rating. When I see it, I want to play it pretty much every time, and it can help me win games. I think that's really what it needs to be for that scaling up procedure. So yeah, this starts out at a 3 for me. I think it kind of goes up to a 3.5. And for those ones that can really build around it and play those pump spells, fight spells, those kind of things, this could be a 4. This isn't the most exciting card for how I typically like to play, but I can recognize when a card has that oomph. And Pompous Gadabout, however you want to say it, has that oomph. I'm gonna put it at a 3.5. Hexproof is great. Hexproof on your turn is excellent. Next, we have Greenbelt Radical. It's a 4 mana, 3 generic, and a green. Centaur Citizen. Disguise 7. And when it's turn face up, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Creature you control gain trample until end of turn. So it's a 4 mana, 4/4 that you can run out for 3, flip for 7, and put a counter on each of your creatures. I think 4 mana, 4/4 is decent. Well, it's not something I want to play every time though. I'm gonna put this at 2.5. I think it can, if you get it to do what you want, it's a three. But otherwise, it's just a 4 4 for 4, which is gonna leave it a little underwhelming for Clinton. Next, we have Chalk Routine, 4 mana, 3 generic, and a green enchantment. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 2 2 white and blue detective creature token, then investigate. I don't want to be slamming this down on turn 4. There's not going to be a good chance that I'm going to be exiling anything from my graveyard on turn 4. It's going to take till turn 5 to just get a 2 2 and make an investigate token, and that is a big if. I'm going to put this at 0. This is something I just don't necessarily want to play. It's not doing really anything for me. And I know I. What did I give? I think I gave Undergrowth Recon a 1 because it's at least playable. Maybe, but it might need to drop to 0 as well because it just needs too much, and it's really just not helping you win the game. 4 minute enchantment, and I mean you have collect evidence to help, but I collect evidence with something, and the biggest thing I got was a 2 2 and a clue. I'm gonna put it at 0. I don't think I'm gonna play that at all. Next, we have Vengeful Creeper, 5 mana for generic and a green, plant elemental with disguise 6. When the Vengeful Creeper is turned face up, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. 5 mana 5 5 with no trample, no reach, no gain life, no nothing, just a 5 mana 5 5. I'm gonna put it at 2. Big bulky creature at 5, you know. And if they have no creatures out, you're swinging in for 5 every turn, you win in 4 turns. So it can help you win a game, but getting it out on the board is not gonna be easy, and the disguise is too hard to pull off. Next, we have Rubble Belt Maverick, green creature, human detective. When it ETBs, surveil 2, and you can exile it from the yard for a green and put a 1 1 counter on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery, it's a 1 1. A 1 1 for 1 that lets you surveil 2 isn't bad. It's not overly exciting, it's not attacking too well. It can put a 1 1 counter later, so it has some versatility. I'm gonna give it a 2. I think really good players, or players that love green, I think they'll be able to do it right with Surveil. Probably play a few of these, manipulate their deck how they want, and put the counters where they want. So I think there's some big brain green players that's gonna take off. But for me, most situations, I'm gonna look at this and be like, what else do I got in the pack? I'm gonna leave that at a 2. Next, we have They Went This Way, 3 mana, 2 generic, and a green. Sorcery, search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, tap, shuffle, investigate. I'm gonna put this at a 2 as well. I like the card, find a basic land, ramping you on turn 3, but do you have room for that? Do you have time for that? You can disguise on turn 3. What I really like about this, it not only finds you the land, it also lets you investigate. So it's generating an artifact that you can sack and also giving you an opportunity to draw a card. If you need draw spells, I think this is going to be there for you. But otherwise, you'll want a threat or something like a creature that's going to give you that draw or that card manipulation ability. I'm gonna leave this at a 2. They Went This Way. Next, we have Slime Against Humanity. I like that. Yeah, I can't say y'all don't like that. Slime Against Humanity. Anyway, 3 mana, 2 generic, and a green. Sorcery. Create a 0/0 green ooze creature token with trample. Put X 1 1 counters on it, where X is 2 plus the total number of cards you own in exile and in your graveyard that are oozes or are slime against humanity. A deck can have any number of cards named Slime Against Humanity. So you run this out, it makes you a 2/2 ooze, right? You run it out again, you're making a what? You're making a 3 no, wait. Initially you make a 2/2. You play it again, you make a 3/3. You play it again, you make a 4/4. So it just scales up on itself. Um 3 mana 2/2 with trample. I'll put it at like a 2.5. It does scale up. You run 2 3 of these. If that ooze happen to stay on the board, you're having a 2-2 with trample, a 3-3 with trample, a 4-4 with trample. I think it scales up, but initially it's just a 2-2 with trample, which is just under exciting for 3. I'm going to put this at a 2. Next, we have Tunnel Tipster, 2 mana, 1 generic and a green. Mole Scout. At the beginning of your end step, if a face down creature entered the battlefield under your control this turn, put a 1/1 counter on Tunnel Tipster. You can use it to tap to add a green mana. It's a 1/1. I like it. Wish it scaled up in power, but no, it does. I said I wish. I just read it. If you run out a morph creature or disguise creature, it gets a 1/1 counter on it. This scales up pretty much every time, and it helps you ramp for 2. I'm gonna give this a 2.75. I think this is really excellent. Not gonna help you win the games, but it's an excellent support spell to help get you there. Next, we have Pick Your Poison, a green sorcery. Choose one. Each opponent sacrifices an artifact. Each opponent sacrifices an enchantment. Each opponent sacrifices a creature with flying. This is very specific. It's it's very mana conscious. It's only one green, and they have to sack something, so you don't have to target it. But it does give them the option to do what they please, like based on the permanent you choose. I'm gonna leave this at a 2. I don't want to run too many of these. It's not specific enough, but I think it is playable. Next, we have Nervous Gardener, 2 mana, 1 generic and a green. Dryad with Disguise 1. I kind of like these low cost disguises. When it's turn face up, search your library for a land with a basic land type, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle. So 2 mana 2/2, solid. I put it at like 2.5. But then it also gives you the tutor up a land. I like that a lot. I'm gonna put this at a 2.75. Still not overly exciting. It doesn't attack well, but it has a little oomph to it. Next, we have Loxodon Eavesdropper, a 4 mana, 3 generic, and a green. When it ETBs, investigate. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, it gets a 1/1 counter and gains vigilance. +3/+3. I don't like the mana cost. I think it's solid. 4 mana, 3/3. It's almost like a 4 mana 4/4. Cool. That investigates, helps you generate an artifact and draw a card. Cool. And it scales up. Cool. It's that mana cost. I'm getting started on turn 4 when we know good and well we need to get started on turns 1 through 3. So I'm gonna rate this at a 2. If you want to build around it, you can probably take that up to at least a 3. But for me, I don't know if I'll ever even play the detective unless I really need to. Like I'm running mono green and I need more cards in my build. Next, we have Bite Down on Crime, 4 mana, 3 generic and a green. As an additional cost to cast this sorcery, you may collect evidence 6. This spell costs 2 less to cast if evidence was collected. So it can be a 2 mana sorcery. Target creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. Hmm. So I'm gonna rate it off of the 4 mana +2/0 deal damage. It's kind of weak for 4 mana, and it's not even instant speed. I rate this as a 1, um, especially in comparison to other fight spells. And I don't even like collect evidence anyway, so I'm definitely gonna rate it as a 1. Bite Down on Crime is not exciting whatsoever. All right. Next, we have V2 Ghazi Inspector, 2 mana, 1 generic and a green. Elf Detective. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may collect evidence. Reach. Whenever ETBs of evidence was collected, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control and gain 2 life. It's a 1/3. I'm gonna leave this at a 2. It's cheap enough to be playable, but its abilities are underwhelming. Next, we have Airtight Alibi, 3 mana, 2 generic and a green. Enchantment Aura with Flash. Enchant creature, ETBs, untap enchanted creature. Gains hexproof until end of turn. If it's suspected, it's no longer suspected. Enchant creature gets 2/2 and can't become suspected. Now this is interesting. I'm gonna put it at 2. I like that it pumps. I like that it gives hexproof. I think hexproof is really what's doing it, and it's making it so a suspected creature that couldn't block before can now block. I think there's gonna be players that can take a card like this and man have some outrageous blowouts. Me personally, not so much. I don't know if I'm gonna run it, but I can see that being a thorn in my side. Next, we have Topiary Panther, a 6 mana, 4 generic, 2 green plant cat with trample and basic land cycling. It's a 6/5. I'll put this at 3. You probably saw me roll my eyes just then. I was like, another 6 mana spell. But it's a 6 mana, 6/5 with trampling, which I'm cool with. It's going to come down. If they don't deal with it, you're dealing damage across the board in a lot of situations. The basic land cycling for me is what sold it to be a 3. You know, um, Throw this away, find the green mana you need early game, and if you happen to have ways to get creatures back from your yard, you're happy to see land cycling creatures every time. I'm gonna give it a 3. It can help win games. It could probably scale to a 3.5, but for now, I'm gonna leave Topiary Panther at a 3. Next, we have Fanatical Strength, 2 generic, 1 wait, 2 mana, 1 generic, and a green instant. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn. I'm gonna give this 2 as well. I think it's an excellent pump spell. +3/+3 and trample is gonna win some games. Probably scales up to a 2.5, but it does take a specific moment, creature, and everything to line up. A hexproof creature or the opponent not having removal. So yeah, I'm gonna leave Fanatical Strength at a 2. I think it's totally playable. It's not a bad card, but it's not just by itself what's gonna help you win the game. So we've gotten through all of the mono color spells, and I still think I lean on what I said the other day. I think white on paper has just some of the most cost efficient, evasive spells out there. Um, with lifelink, uh, flyers, with the removal spells, I think that was one like 3 mana exile or something like that. Bounce spells, um, find your cases. Like there's just a lot of maneuverability. Return from the graveyard in white, surprising for cheap. So I think just in my head right now, a mono white 1 to 3 mana costing spell with some artifacts and pump spells could be really solid. Probably the best monocolored, and then if I had to go monocolor again, I would say red would be after that. With those hasty boys and first strike creatures and pump spells, I just think red is right there with white, but I think white just has that consist. I love getting things back from the yard. Red's not manipulating from the yard. I love gaining life. Red isn't gaining life. I like drawing cards. Red is drawing cards, but white is too. So for me, the consistency is all in white. Red has that power and strength that I want, and if I had to choose a color after that, it may be green. Green has a lot of low cost creatures that can give you that value you want and manipulate into a bigger board state that can get out of hand. Then I would have to say blue. I think blue for the right player is gonna probably be probably number 1 or 2. For me, I see, and I think there's gonna be some times that I bump it over 1. I like how some of the spells read out. I just got to see how it goes. So this is almost like a wild card color for me because it has the spells there, but I don't know if it has the consistency based off of the rarity of the spells. And then I would fall to black. Black has a lot of good stuff, but it's more like you got to build it up, and I don't necessarily always want to have to build it up. I don't want to give my opponents things like creatures on my with my 3 mana menace creature, things like that. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for this set. Um, so far, I think disguise is probably one of the is the strongest mechanic. I love that those creatures have hexproof. There's a lot of ways to flip them as well. Not a lot of ways, but mm, enough ways for to flip them, and the cost is reasonable enough. I really like that. Collect evidence is not so much. Honestly, I take that back. I think cloak might be my favorite because cloak is not like disguise. Cloak can cloak lands, instants, and sorceries that might not be useful anymore. A boo boo creature you was gonna use for support, it can turn that into something else that has pseudo hexproof with ward. So I think cloak is my favorite, followed by disguise, and I don't think collect evidence is on the board at all for mechanics that I like what other mechanic was there that was emphasized? Haste is good. So it's mostly just disguise going on. Disguise and cloak, and then you can collect evidence as a support theme. So I'm gonna take a quick break, stretch my legs, walk around, and then I'll be back to wrap up with the multicolored cards, followed by the artifacts. So stay tuned. Ayo! Hello, Fantastics. It's Mr. Clintastik back with my Murders at Karlov Manor set review for Magic the Gathering. If you enjoy my content, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Helps the channel to grow in the future. Alright, we've already gone over all 5 mono colors white, blue, black, red, and green. Personally, I've decided that white is my favorite, followed by red. Then green, I won't say is my favorite, but I think it's power wise right after red, then blue, then black. But honorary mention, I think blue might have those tools to really stand out if it happens to come together. So that's where I stand on that. If you missed out on the review, I'm going to be chopping that up, piecing that up, and putting it on the YouTube channel with the proper titles and whatnot. So now we're here with the multicolored spells, and these are the spells that are going to kind of help you determine what 2 color, or I guess 3 colors, you're going to be in. Let's begin. Oh, and as a reminder, this review is for limited, which is draft and sealed events. They're not necessarily for constructed, including like historic or standard or modern or commander or anything like that. This is for draft and seal only and whatnot. And it's based on a 0 to 5 point rating scale. 0 being totally unplayable, just don't even bother to run it. 5 being just pretty much an every deck slam dunk, just grab it, run with it. It's gonna do you right. So yeah, let's begin. First we have Kaya's Spirit. No, Kaya Spirit's Justice, 4 mana, 2 generic, white, black, Planeswalker, which is always a slam dunk and limited in most situations. Whenever one or more creatures you control and or creatures in your graveyard are put into exile, you may choose a creature card from among them. Until the end of your turn, target token you control becomes a copy of it, except it has flying. You can pay 2, surveil 2. No, not pay 2. You can up it for 2, surveil 2, then discard. No, then exile a card from a graveyard. You can pay 1. You can plus 1, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. You can -2, exile target creature you control. For each other player, exile up to 1 target creature that player controls. And it starts with 3 loyalty. So for 4 mana, 3 loyalty, I get to surveil 2, exile a card from a graveyard. Meh. Or I get to create a 1/1 black spirit creature token with flying. Meh. And then I can neg to exile a creature I control, and for each other player, exile up to 1 target creature that player control. So the big thing on here is the 4 mana neg 2. And I can recur that because I can plus make a creature neg 2 again. That's a lot of value. That's a lot of value. And I can turn my tokens into other creatures with flying. I think Kaya is one of those 5.0 cards. It has removal, creature generation, and creature manipulation, and graveyard interaction. Like, these are all things that I want. These are all things that I need. So yeah, Kaya Spirit Justice gets a strong 5.0 from Clinton. I think I'm going to be very afraid every time Kaya comes out. You're going to have to figure out how to... First off, they're going to already have a plan to deal with your creature when it comes out. You're going to have to figure out how to deal the damage to it or kill it. And there's not many things that's ready to do that. So, yeah. If you see Kaya Spirit Justice, pick it. Figure it out. Run it. Recursive removal, yeah. Recursive creature generation, yeah. Next we have Volja, Jaws of the Conclave. It is a 5 mana, 2 generic, a red, a green, a white, legendary creature wolf. Mythic, Vigilance, Trample, Ward 3. Whenever it attacks, put X/1/1 counters on each creature you control where X is the number of elves you control. Draw a card for each wolf you control. So this could have been like this could have been just so awesome, right? Like, why do I need to have elves? Tell me. Why do I need to have elves? So this is a 5 mana 5/5 with vigilance and trample. But the colors make like I would normally just say a 2 for a 5 mana 5/5. Vigilance, trample, ward 3 is very powerful abilities that would instantly make me want to be like, oh, this is a 3 at least. But the three colors, it makes it difficult to play. But once you get on the board, it's there, and every time it attacks, you draw a card. I'm gonna give it a 3.25. The color scheme is what's messing me up. It forces you into white, green, red. It does, and that's not always easy to play. It's almost like saying, "Oh, this is 6, 7 mana," because you really got to line it up. But all of the upside can definitely scale up to 3.5 for status easy, even higher by drawing you cards. But you have to make it happen. Oh, am I not going the right direction? I'm going across when I might need to be going down. I don't think it matters so much with the multicolor spells. I can just go across. They're multicolored. All right. Next we have Ansrog the Quake Mole. 4 mana, 2 generic, red, green, legendary creature, mole god. When Ansrog the Quake Mole becomes blocked, untap each creature you control. After this combat phase, there's an additional combat phase. You can pay 7 mana, 3 generic, 2 red, 2 green. Ansrog must be blocked each combat this turn if able. 8/4. So it's a 4 mana, 8/4. Those are some stats. And it's only in two colors. Like if this was it, like say this was only red or only green. First off, what an 8/4 for that cheap a price for four? Give me that because in what 3 turns unblocked with this, I'm winning. This is instant 3.5 for me. Um, and if they block it, I get another combat phase, and I know there's enough combat tricks in this set to make this dangerous. Like the actual artwork reflects how dangerous this card is. Like what? I'm gonna give this a 3.5. This might even be straight up a 4. Like it needs a little bit of help. They can probably take two. We talked about that 4 mana 2/2 that makes the other 2/2. I mean, that's enough to double block it off of one card. So it's like, is that card equal to this? No. This needs a little bit of support to get through. So that's why I'm not putting it immediately at a 4. But my geez, in the right deck, this is gonna be it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt because you're gonna be like, oh, I gotta block it. First strike. What? Huh? Yeah. Trample. What? Oh man, this trampling over. Even with 1+1 and trample, they block with a 1/1 thinking, oh man, that ain't nothing. 8 points of damage. Almost half their life. Ansrog, you man, that's hype. That's a very hype card for me. I'd want to run red green with it. It's too exciting. I'd love to see how that plays out. Next we have Vanifar Evolved Enigma. 4 mana, 2 generic, a green and a blue. Legendary creature, Elf Ooze Wizard. Relevant creature type. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one, cloak a card from your hand, or put a 1/1 counter on each colorless creature you control. It's a 3/4. 4 mana 3/4 is not that great. 4 mana 3/4 that generates a 2/2. Potentially, you got to have a card in your hand. and you can cloak it for free. So if you happen to build into the disguised deck with a good card that you want to cloak, that's great. Or you can choose lands and cloak them. I like all of these things, but they're all ifs and maybes. Like even the second ability, put a 1/1 counter on each colorless. You got to have them out there to do so, which I think you will. I think it's almost like a self generator, but it runs out because if you don't have cards in hand, you're not generating nothing. I'm gonna leave this at a three. Maybe I'm gonna put it at 3.25 actually, because it just needs a little bit of help. A little bit of help. The mana cost is holding it back a bit too. I don't feel like this is absolute blowout card. I feel like this is something like, if you're able to build with it, you're gonna do well. But say this is your top deck. There's nothing on the board. You cloak a card from your hand, doesn't do anything. Put a 1/1 counter on each colorless creature, doesn't do anything. Just a three, a 4 mana 3/4. Whereas the Quake mode, you play it for four. At the end of the day, if nothing else goes your way, if nothing else happens, it's a blank board. You're swinging in for freaking eight for a 4 mana. Yes, yes, give it to me. I'll leave Vanifar at a 3.25. I think it's slightly behind the mole. Honestly, I think the mole skill's higher than it. I think the mole is probably a 3.75, and this is probably a 3.25. Next, we have Alkis Prof Master Sleuth. 3 mana, 1 generic, a white, and a blue. Legendary creature, human detective with vigilance. When it ETBs, investigate. You can pay X, a white, to blue. Tap, sacrifice a clue. You draw X cards and gain X life. Oh, okay. It's a 3/3. So a 3/3 for 3 is solid. It's only two different colors, so that's not too bad. I'll put it instantly at a 3. It has vigilance. I'll move it up to a 3.25. It investigates. I'll I'll leave it at 3.25 just because, But then the added ability, X white and blue, sacrifice a clue, draw X cards, gain X life. That's really strong. I'm gonna put this at a 3.5 for me because this isn't like dealing additional damage. This isn't driving the ball across the line of scrimmage. This is simply supporting you. Now it does have vigilance, and if you can support its vigilance, you could probably get off some attacks and leave yourself up for some pretty good blocks. But other than that, I feel like you're gonna want this for more support and utility. So I'm gonna leave it at 3.5. And the cost I think makes it a little bit better than Vanifar. Next we have Etrata, Deadly Fugitive. 3 mana, 1 generic, a blue and a black with Death Touch, Vampire Assassin. Face down creatures you control have pay 2 generic, a blue and a black. Turn this creature face up. If you can't exile it, then you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. What? Whenever an assassin you control deals combat damage to an opponent, cloak the top card of that player's library. This is a 1/4. There's kind of a lot to unpack here. So you got your 3 mana 1/4 in blue black. That's not great. Boom, not great. But it has Death Touch. So it's like, oh, okay, well, this is decent. Any creature that doesn't have more than 4 power can't even trade with this. They can't even attack into it. So that's solid. I'll put it at 3. Then it has the ability. I'm gonna start with this one first because I think this is really important. Whenever an assassin you control deals combat damage to a player, an opponent, cloak the top card of that player's library. You start stealing their things. They're not milling. You're stealing their things away. What? Yes. Even lands become creatures. You're stealing their things away and generating creatures, and then you can cast the creature if it has disguise, or you tap into this ability. Face down creatures you control have pay 4. turn this creature face up. So even if it's not a disguised creature, you can still flip it for 4. That's not a bad cost. If you can't flip, if you can't turn it into a creature, you exile it. You may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. What? That could be game breaking. That could turn some of these really high cost spells from even your opponent into game breakers. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I love this card. It might not be the best for limited. It might not be. But in my mind, I'm like, what? Now I would have to go through see how many assassins we got. I would really want to be in a disguise build. There's some things, there's caveats to this. I want to be in disguise build. I want to have some additional assassins and whatnot. Maybe even some counter spells. But this is a real like if I can get this and control what's going on in the game, my opponents are gonna hate me. I'm gonna have the time of my life. I am gonna have the absolute time of my life. Base stats, this is at least a 3. I'm giving it a 3.5, and I think if you build around it, it could jump all the way up to something even like a 4.5. I think this is crazy, crazy strong. Just from manipulating their build, you get to take their good things. Like you already have your good thing here, and it's like, oh, I get to take your good things and play them. I'm giving it a 3.5. Did I? Hold on. Did I give something else a 3.75? I think it was Ansrog. I gave the 3.75 to, and I think that's still right because by itself it's dealing 8 damage. This is more of a build around, but at the same time it's not by itself. You deal damage with it, you instantly start generating. It's there for me. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Errata Deadly Fugitive. Next we have Tristani 3 Whispers. It is 3 mana, a green, a hybrid green white, and a white. Legendary Dryad. You can pay 2, a 1 generic and a green. Target creature gains Death Touch until end of turn. You can pay a hybrid green white. Target creature gains Vigilant until end of turn. Or you can pay 3, 2 generic and a white. Target creature gains Double Strike until end of turn. And it's a 4/4. A 3 mana 4/4 is great. Instantly I put that at a 3. That's solid. That it's not too hard to play. You can play it for 2 white and a green or 2 green and a white, however you want to do it. Then all those manipulating abilities, you can give something Death Touch. You can give something Vigilance. You can give something Double Strike itself for 3. You play this on turn 3. Say they have nothing on board. Perfect world. On turn 4, you're swinging in for 8 damage. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I'm gonna put this at a 3.5. And I think this scales up as well. Um, this might even be a 4. I, to a degree, it depends on how good the white green shell is. Cause yeah, this might even be a 4. This has Death Touch, Vigilance, and Double Strike at 3 mana. I know you got to sink more mana into it, but it's all the things. The only thing it's missing is lifelink. You give this pump spells or any kind of assistance is backbreaking. It's backbreaking. You pump this up by 3, give it Double Strike. I mean, it's 14. Like that's crippling. So I'm gonna give it a 3.5, and I think it totally scales up. I honestly think it might be. I'm gonna give it a 3.75. This card's really really good. Tristani 3 Whispers. Let's see. Hmm. All right. Next we have Rakdos, Patron of Chaos. It is a 6 mana, 4 generic, black, and a red demon flying trample. At the beginning of your end step, target opponent may sacrifice 2 non-land, non-token permanents. If they don't, you draw 2 cards. It's a 6/6. Ooh, the multicolor is going insane now. I kind of mentioned with the 6 mana, 6/6 in red that I'm like, I'm glad it has flying and trample. It's the same deal with this. I'm happy it has flying and trample. 6 mana is still really expensive, but At the beginning of your end step, target opponent may sacrifice two non-land, non-token permanents. If they don't, you draw two cards. That's solid too. I can't I can't put this at three. And the reason why is the mana cost. Now, a six mana, 6/6 flying trampoline boy, it could win you games. But at the same time, the difficulty of getting there is so. I play a lot of draft, I play a lot of limited. It's so, for me that I can't say that it's just the average, easy going card. I got to put this at 2.75. I think this is powerful, and I think this is definitely a game winning card. But you got to get it to the board. And if you can't get it to the board, how are you going to win the game? Rakdos Patron of Chaos is really exciting, though. Next, we have Tomic Wielder of Law. 3 mana, 1 generic, a white, and a black. Legendary creature, human advisor. Has an affinity for planeswalkers. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each walker you control. Innocent white, black, and as we saw, we have the Kaya planeswalker. So if you happen to get Kaya, Antomic, hey, I mean, there's a little synergy there. Come on now. It's a flying vigilant card. Whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if two or more of those creatures are attacking you and or a planeswalker you control, that opponent loses 3 life. You draw a card. So it kind of restricts your opponent. It restricts your opponent from swinging in with more than one creature, essentially, because it's like, oh, well, if you swing in with 2 or more creatures, hopefully you're swinging in with more power than 3 because you're losing 3 life, and you're giving me a card. That's really exciting. Hey Sims, how are you? Thank you for pulling up. I was actually gonna reach out to you, see if you want to do a co review at some point, but I wanted to go on and review the cards solo first and kind of get an understanding. But yeah, Tomic is looking really, really nice here. Flying 2/4, opponent attacks with 2 or more creatures, they lose 3 life, you draw a card. So you've never done a set review? I'm shocked. I'm shocked, Sim. You're really knowledgeable, and I think for me, it helps me reflect when I'm actually picking the cards, like what I already previously thought on them. But there's certain strategies that I'm still trying to learn and practice, even after all these years of playing. You like not knowing until it releases? Oh man, you're something serious. But yeah, I'm doing a 0 to 5 scale based off of how powerful I think the card is, how good I think it is at winning games. Now, a 3 mana 2/4 flying and vigilant is good stats. Um, I'd put this at a 3 immediately because it's something that's like, okay, cool. I'm swinging in for 2, and they can't really swing back because it's got the nice butt on it. The extra ability is nice. I would put this at 3.25 to a 3.5. Um, I, and I think it could scale up, but it depends on the opponent really being like, okay, cool. If they're, in most cases, if they're gonna swing at you, knowing what you got going on, it's gonna be worth it for them. To me, you said it's all the same to you, man. It has not run together for me yet. There's still nuances that I'm still trying to grasp as far as like overall curve of the deck. I'm still working on um, multi-modal cards, like those advantages, fight spells. Like I could go on. I'm a nerd though. I'm too Everything's so minute for me, and I probably overthink everything. But I'll get there. Next we have Melek refers Reforged Researcher. It's a 5 mana 3 generic, a blue and a red legendary creature. Weird detective. I just like that weird detective. Anyways, its power and toughness are equal to twice the number of instants and sorceries in your graveyard, and the first instant and sorcery you cast each turn costs 3 less to cast. I don't like this. I don't like this. So this for 5 mana, if you have no instants and sorceries in your graveyard, this is a 0/0. Hey, okay, if you're consistently hitting Mythic, I mean, I don't know how often you actually do like big events like on MTGO or whatnot. I wouldn't doubt it. I really wouldn't. And to be real, I think if you put out more like directed content, you'd get so many more viewers, bro. Like you're really freaking good. Hell yeah. I think you just need to kind of repurpose your content and have some branding going on. That's all you need because you got the skills down pat. And something like a set review, people want to understand. Like when I tune in to watch you, I'm like, man, how am I gonna get better? It's not just for entertainment. It's like, you're one of the players I watch. I want to learn how to improve. And even at my skill level, I'm doing these set reviews so people that aren't as good as me, they can gain an understanding so they can come into the conversation and be like, okay, I tried what you tried and it worked like this for me. I like those conversations, especially in Magic. Anyways, I don't like Malek refers researcher 5 mana 0/0. It reduces the cost of your instants and sorceries, but there's so much build around with this that I don't like it at all. And if it's ever a 5 mana 0/0, it's zero for me in playability. I'm gonna call it a zero for now, and it can go up to a one if you're able to play it right. And if you build around it, maybe a two. But off of first glance for limited, it is not looking exciting at all. Man, I'm telling you, Sims, there's a lot of potential with the work you do. I know you've been, you got your personal life going on, work going on. Same with me. I'm just now getting back to a point where I can even think on trying to do a set review. I haven't done one in a couple of years. I've just been on my grind. So to find the time to kick back and it be a relaxing session instead of it being a stress like, oh, I gotta jam this in now because I ain't got time for that and I gotta sacrifice my sleep. I'm gonna kick back, I'm gonna breathe, I'm gonna read the cards and really reflect on what I think of them. So yeah. Next we have Agras Kos, Spirit of Justice. 4 mana, 2 generic, a red and a white legendary creature, Spirit Detective, double strike, vigilance. I'm liking that. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, choose up to one target creature. If it's suspected, exile it. Otherwise, suspected. Huh? What? It's a 2/4? What? Okay, suspect was another mechanic I forgot all about. I like suspect as well. Just giving one of my creatures. It's twofold. You can give a creature menace, essentially, and make it not able to block, or you can give your opponent creature menace, but they are not able to block with that creature now. You get to kind of control the tides of combat. For sure, for sure. But you get to kind of like control the terms and conditions of combat. I like suspect a lot. And with this, when it ETBs, if they have a suspected creature, you just get to exile it. You just get to exile it. This is a 4 mana, and it's a condition to it. They have to have a suspected creature. I feel like in most cases, they're going to have a suspected creature on the board for you to exile with this card. And if they don't, you can make this a suspect. It ETBs, choose up to one target creature. You're going to make your 2/4 double strike vigilant have menace? What? Or you give their creature suspect, and then when you attack, you exile it. This is. See, this is crazy. What? Oh my! Like I've given like one card a five. I forgot what it was. What card was a five for me? I think it was Kaya. Kaya was a five. That was a really good Planeswalker recursive removal. This is right there with it. This is a game. This is a back-breaking card all by itself and has a lot of value. I love this. I I want to say 4.75, but it's probably just a five. If I give it 4.75, I think I'd have to give Kaya 4.75. And that's just me saying there's no perfect card, but this card is absolutely broken. Yeah, it's a five in relation to the set. All of these ratings are in relation to the cards in the set. You said Jit in opposition is better. Yeah, Yeah, this is only in relation to the set. So for now, I'm gonna give it a five. I don't think there's a time where you're just gonna be upset to ever play this card. Ever. Like once again, you can make it a suspect and you all of a sudden have a menace vigilant double striker, or you can make their creature a suspect and then exile it when you attack. Or there's just so much maneuverability with this card. I'm gonna leave it at a five and just see how it goes. Next, we have Urgent Necropsy. Can't even talk. Urgent Necropsy. 4 mana, 2 generic, a black and a green instant. As an additional cost to cast the spell, collect evidence X, where X is the total mana value of the permanent this spell targets. Destroy up to one target artifact, up to one target creature, up to one target enchantment, and up to one target planeswalker. I think collect evidence is boo boo. I do not like collect evidence. 4 mana, I could collect evidence X. Total mana value of the permanents this spell total mana value of the permanents. So if I want to target a 6 mana permanent, 6 mana creature, I gotta collect evidence 6, and if I want to choose other targets, I have to add to that. Yeah, I don't like this. I don't like Urgent Necropsy. I think it's a little overcosted. I'm not a big fan of collect evidence already. I think it's playable, and I think somebody can do something with it. One of those big brain Green Golgari players. I'm gonna leave this at like kind of like a one for me because it doesn't even straight up blow up. You have to collect the right amount of evidence. I'm gonna leave it at a one. Next, we have Kylax Volstrider. 3 mana, 1 generic, a blue and a red vehicle. Collect evidence 6. Becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Collect evidence looks like trash. Anyway, when it attacks, you may cast an instant of sorcery from among cards exiled with it. If that spell would be put into a graveyard, put it on the bottom of its owner's library instead. And Crew 2 is a 4/4. Okay. This is one of the first collect evidence spells that I'm rocking with. So you can crew it for two. It's 3 mana, 4/4 crew two. It avoids a lot of evasion. There's two board wipes at least in the set, so it's gonna avoid those. And you can you can choose to collect like use your instants and sorceries as the collect evidence resources to crew your vehicle. Then when you attack with the vehicle, you can cast those spells and basically put them back into your library. So you're not totally removing those cards from the game. You're recycling. I like this. I think this is solid, and I think big brain is it players are gonna make the most use out of this card. It's mythic, so you're not gonna see it too often. But yeah, I think built around and done right, this could be a really good card. I'm gonna give it a 3 point. I'm gonna give it a 3.25, and I think it's really like a 3.5. But it's not gonna win games on its own. You really gotta kind of set it up to a degree. So I'm gonna leave it at 3.25 and see if it gets any value. And if it turns out this doesn't do anything, it could easily fall to like a 2.5 or a 2. I just would want to see if this works out. Next we have Niv Mizzet Guild Pack. 5 mana, white, blue, black, red, green, legendary creature dragon avatar. It's rare, flying, hexproof from multicolored. Have we seen a lot of multicolored removal? Not so much. Whenever Niv Mizzet Guild Pack deals combat damage to a player, it deals X damage to any target. Target player draws X cards, and you gain X life, where X is the number of different color pairs among permanents you control that are exactly two colors. And it's a 6/6. Okay, now. A 5 mana 6/6 is great. The fact that it has to be all five colors is tough. It's going to be hard to do that in limited. Like, to have every color you need, unless there's a way to make all colors, make all lands all colors. Um, if that's in the set, great. On paper, this is probably going to be just about unplayable in limited. All the abilities are superb. Flying, hexproof from multicolor is semi weak, especially when we have straight up multicolored cards. No, straight up hexproof cards in the set. We also have disguise cards in the set. This would have been a great card to have disguise attached to get it out a little sooner. And then have the cost to flip it be the five colors. So there was ways to make this card way better. The abilities are broken. You get it out, you're winning the game. So this card has like two ratings. If you can't play this card because who's running five colors, it's a zero. It's a dud, and you're not going to be happy to have it at all. But if you are, if you're that Chad, if you're that guy, and you're able to jab Niv Mizzet Guild Pack to the board, a 5 mana 6/6 that deals X damage to target player and target player draws X cards and you gain X life where X is the number of different colored pairs among permanents you control that are exactly two colors. I think you're going to be happy. It needs a lot of support though, so it drifts it away from a five, but still a 5 mana 6/6 with flying is really nice. That being said, I'm gonna give it a three. I'm gonna give it a three. I'm actually gonna give it a 0 to a 3.5. It's either a 0 or a 3.5. If you build around it and it's done right, this card is a blowout. If you don't, it does nothing for you. You're unhappy. You're sad. So it's either one or the other. Next, we have World Souls Rage. It is an X generic, a red and a green sorcery. World Souls Rage deal X damage to any target. Put up to X land cards from your hand and or graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. So for 3 mana, this is deal 1 damage. For 4 mana, this is deal 2 damage to any target. To any target is great. This scales up, so to deal 4 damage, you got to deal 6. And you can get cards back from the graveyard. This is not that great of a removal spell. I love that it does damage to a target, though. To any target. They can include the planeswalkers like Kaya we saw and the opponent. I just think it's pseudo weak and it's specifically in two colors. I'm gonna give it like a 2.5. No, I'm gonna give it a 2.25. Honestly, and it can win games, so it can scale up, but initially, it's not doing exactly enough for me. See, I gotta. All right. Next, we have Ill Time Explosion. 4 mana, 2 generic, a blue and a red sorcery. Draw 2 cards. Then you may discard 2 cards. When you do, Ill Timed Explosion deals X damage to each creature, where X is the greatest mana value among cards discarded this way. So, we have a board wipe in white. We have a board wipe in black. We have a tap down board wipe, not board wipe, tap down control card in blue. But now in blue red, we have a pseudo board wipe. This deals X damage, so you can kind of control the amount of damage you deal to the board. It's a pseudo controlled board wipe that draws you cards. This is pretty silly, right? For 4 mana, I draw 2 cards. Cool. I may discard 2 cards. I don't have to. And if I have, if I want to deal 5 damage, discard a 5 mana card. If I want to deal 3 damage, discard a 3 mana card. It really depends on what's in my hand, but there's a lot of control associated with this card. I like it a lot. And even if you don't want a board wipe, you're still drawing the 2 cards. I'm going to put this at a 3.25. It might even be a 3.5. This card does a lot on its own. It doesn't win the game by itself, but it does a lot. Actually, and that's the thing. Maybe I'm overrating it because it's not going to win you the game by itself. And it's not always going to be the appropriate board wipe. 4 mana, draw two cards is overcosted. I'm going to have to put this at a 2.5. It's something I'll definitely play. I have fun playing it, but it's not necessarily like what's necessary to take over the game. Next, we have Officious Interrogation, a white and a blue instant. It costs a white and a blue more to cast for each target beyond the first. Choose any number of target players. Investigate X times, where X is the total number of creatures that player controls. Ooh. Oh, this is a way to get a lot of artifacts to the board really, really fast, right? Or am I tripping? I'm once again not something that's gonna just win you the game, but it's a really good support spell or utility card because it gets you artifacts to sack, artifacts to draw cards with. All that's missing is gaining life. So for 2 mana, if they have three creatures on the board, you get three clues. One creature on the board, you get one, but it scales up. I'm gonna give it a 2.5. I think a lot of people are gonna try it, and if it doesn't do enough work, I think it could fall down to a 2. It might be a 2 off rip, but I think it's just easy to play. 2 mana, get the three clues. I'm gonna actually leave this at 2 because my thing is, do you want the opponent to have a lot of creatures? I don't like the opponent even having a lot of creatures at all. So in my ideal world, they have zero creatures, and they have zero creatures. This does nothing. And I think in a case where something potentially does nothing, I can't. I gotta lean on that. Like, there's a high chance this does nothing for you. I'm gonna drop it down to a 1. Next, we have Yaris, Roar of the Old Gods, 4 mana, 2 generic, a red and a green. Centaur Druid. Other creatures you control have haste. Whenever one or more face down creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Icy. Whenever a face down creature you control dies, return to the battlefield face down under its owner's control. If it's a permanent card, then turn it face up. And it's a 4/4. This is delicious. What? What? 4 mana 4/4 is solid. I'm gonna put it at a 3. 4 mana 4/4 that gives my other creatures haste. I'm gonna put it at 3.25. A 4 mana 4/4 that gives other creatures haste and gives me the potential to draw cards. That's a potential. I'm gonna leave it at 3.25. But the additional ability of whenever a face down creature you control dies, returns to the battlefield face down under its owner's control. If it's a permanent, flip it up. Got to put it at least a 3.5. In the right disguised deck, this is going to be absolutely busted and scale up from that. That's going to scale up from that. Now, say you don't have any face down creatures. This is just a 4 mana 4/4/4, but it still gives things haste. It's between a 3.25 to 3.5 for me. I don't think it's the hardest to play. I think it has solid stats. It gives other things haste, which is going to be broken. I'm going to give it a 3.5 and move on from there. I think the slight overrating because you need the morph creatures, but I think we're going to have enough disguise creatures to make that shake. All right. Next, we have Leyline of the Guild Pack. It is a 4 mana, a white green hybrid, a blue green hybrid, a black green hybrid, and a red green hybrid. So you can play this for 4 green because it's all green pips, or you can include the colors as needed. If Leyline of the Guild Pack is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. Each non-land permanent you control is all colors. Lands you control are basic lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. So this is something that would work with your guild pack. Like if you get Niv Mizzet of the guild pack, you want something like this. And this helps really fix. It's not so hard to play. You lean green. It'll want you to lean green for your fixing. I'm gonna give this a. I gotta give it a one as well. It's hard to play, and it's not doing anything to your opponent. It's doing nothing to them. So they're just like, okay, cool, I guess. If you open up with it at the beginning of the game, cool. But even then, it's not doing nothing for you until you need it to. Gotta leave it at a one. Next, we have Ezrim Agency Chief. It is a 5 mana, 1 generic, a white, no, 1 generic, 2 white, 2 blue, legendary creature, Archon Detective with flying. When it ETBs, investigate twice. Okay. You can pay 1, sacrifice an artifact. It gains your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, or Hexproof until end of turn. So you play this, it's a 5 mana, 5/5 flyer. Solid. Investigate twice so it can draw you 2 cards. You can sacrifice those 2 in specific or any other artifact. Give it Vigilant, Lifelink, or Hexproof. Broken. Broken. The color requirements make it a little more difficult to play. It is 5 mana, but the fact that it has Lifelink, which can bring you back into a game, potential Vigilance, or Hexproof, those are all the things you need. I'm going to put this at a 4. We're going to be seeing, people are going to play Archon Detective. Don't think they're not. And if you think I'm in a position to win the game with my mono red deck or something like this, they jam this and you don't have a way to remove it off the board, they're going to sacrifice, gain 5 life, and then you got to be at risk of them gaining hexproof at any time. That's a hurt state. I'm going to put that at 4, and I think that easily scales up to like a 4.5 or greater. Next, we have Treacherous Greed, 3 mana, 1 generic, a white, and a black instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature that dealt damage this turn. Draw 3 cards. Each opponent loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. I don't like this. So, I gotta sacrifice my creature. I pay 3, sacrifice the creature, draw 3 cards. I gain 3 life, the opponent loses 3 life. I think this needs too much support. But I know people are going to play it. Instant speed. They're going to swing their little 1/1 token or whatnot at me. Next thing you know, they're going to. Wait, no, 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 no. So, they gotta have a creature that's strong enough to deal damage and survive. Creature gotta deal damage and survive to be able to sacrifice it. I think this is a 1. I think this is almost unplayable, but I think people are gonna play it. And I think there's gonna be times, certain situations where they're like, oh, great. Not only am I beating your face in with my creature, um, I get to draw 3 cards off of it. But my thing is, if I have a creature that's strong enough to deal combat damage, maybe it's for the unblockable creatures. I'm thinking too much. This is a 3 mana, potentially draw 3 cards in white black. People are going to play it. I'm going to rate it a 1 that scales to a 2. And I just know in most situations, it's not going to be the game winning card, but there's going to be certain situations where I'm like, God dang it, why they get a chance to draw 3 cards off of 1 spell? That's insane. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 1 that scales to a 2. It's probably a 2. Lazav, Wearer of Faces, a blue and a black legendary creature, shapeshifter detective. Whenever Lazav, Wearer of Faces attacks, exile target card from a graveyard, then investigate. Nice. Recurable investigation is really good. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, you may have Lazav become a copy of a creature card exiled with it until end of turn. Okay, it's a 2/3. I like this. 2 mana, 2/3 in blue black, solid stats. Whenever you attack, exile a card from the graveyard, so it has graveyard interaction. It also generates clues, so it can potentially draw you a card, and it can turn into other creatures. This has a lot of manipulation to it. I think it's a build around to a degree. Certain conditions have to be met, but I think it's immediately a 3. 2 mana, 2/3 solid. The graveyard manipulation is great. The investigate's great. I'm gonna put this at 3.25. Next we have Tesa Opulent Oligarch. That's a 3 mana, 1 generic, white, black, human advisor, legendary creature with Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, investigate for each opponent who lost life this turn. Whenever a clue you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white and black creature token with flying. This ability triggers only once each turn. It's a 2/3. White black looks to be really good. Like white black, red green looks to be the best, in my opinion. Like if you're gonna be basing it off of no white blue as well. White blue looks really strong. This is the only thing. Tristani looks good in white green. But yeah, white black by itself has some solid pieces. So let me finish. It has Death Touch. Whenever at the beginning of your end step, investigate for each opponent who lost life this turn. And whenever a clue you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. This triggers once a turn. It can trigger on your opponent's turn. And you can sack a clue at instant speed. Now, you're going to need a way to deal the damage to the opponent or get them to lose life. So there's some build up around this, but simply being a 3 mana 2/3 with Death Touch is really good. They're going to have disguised creatures can't swing through this. And you might be able to block or swing into really good valuable creatures with that Death Touch ability. So I like the card. I think it's like a 3.25 that can scale up based off of how you build around it. Next we have Azoni, Center of the Web, a 6 mana, 4 generic, a black and a green, legendary creature elf detective with menace. Whenever it ETBs or attacks, you may collect 4. If you do, create 2/2/1 black and green spider creature tokens with menace and reach. You can sacrifice 4 tokens, any tokens I guess, surveil 2, draw 2 cards, gain 2 life. It's a 5/4, so a 6 mana 5/4 with menace. I don't. There's too much mana. It's overcosted. It's overcosted, but it's more than that. If you can pull off the collect evidence ability, and with it being 6 mana, there's a good chance that you are. You can collect evidence for create 2/1/1 black and green spider creature tokens. This is recurable. You can collect evidence when it ETBs. You can collect evidence when it attacks. I'm gonna give this a 2.75 simply off the mana cost. I think this is game winning, game breaking, but I'm not a big fan of collect. The fact that you have to, if you don't collect, it's just a 6 mana 5/4 with menace. That's pretty basic. Gotta give it. I'm gonna give it a 2.75 because it's almost that card like, oh, this is great, but it's lacking in some components. Next we have Kylox Visionary Inventor, 7 frickin' mana, 5 generic, a blue and a red. Legendary creature, Vishino Artificer, Menace, Ward 2 and Haste. Whenever it attacks, sacrifice any number of other creatures, then exile the top X card of your library where X is their total power. You may cast any number of instant and or sorcery spells from among the exile cards without paying their mana cost. It's a 4/4. I applaud the person that made the card. It's cool. Menace, Ward 2, Haste, cool. And I'm guessing whoever the team was like, oh, if it's gonna cast multiple cards for cheap, it has to be expensive. And in limited, that's just not gonna work out well for us. A 7 mana in a set that doesn't have any kind of. I haven't seen any treasures. I haven't made it to the artifact, so I don't know how easy it's gonna be to ramp. This is just gonna be a You're gonna get it out, and they're gonna have two blockers, and you're gonna be like, Now, and you have to sacrifice creatures with. I'm putting it at 0. This is bad in limited. I can't pay any respect to Kylox. Blue red isn't looking that great right now. All right. Next we have Tolsimir Midnight's Light. It is a 5 mana, 2 generic, a green and 2 white. Legendary creature, Elf Scout, rare. Lifelink. When it ETBs, create Volja Finstalker, a legendary 5/5 green and white wolf creature token with trample. And whenever a wolf you control attacks, if Tolsimir attack this combat, target creature and opponent control blocks that wolf this combat if able. It's a 3/2. A 5 mana 3/2 is not that great. A 5 mana 3/2 that generates a 5/5 regardless is really nice. There's 8 power on the board, 2 targets. It also has lifelink. I'm gonna put this at a 3. 5 mana, it's tough. But a 5 mana 3/2 that generates a 5 mana creature, that's a lot of value. And this has lifelink, and this can make creatures block. I'm gonna put this at 3.25 that can scale up to a 5. I really like Tolsimir. I think green white's looking way better than blue red is. I'm gonna give Tolsimir a 3.25, and I have a feeling that's gonna scale up. I think it's gonna end up being a 3.5, maybe even higher in my scale. Next, we have Kellen, Inquisitive Prodigy, a 4 mana, 2 generic green and a blue, legendary creature, human, fairy, detective, rare. It has the Adventure of Tail the Suspect, green, blue. You can investigate. You may play an additional land this turn for 2 mana. That's not bad. And for 4 mana, it's a flying vigilant. Whenever it attacks, destroy up to 1 target artifact. If you control that permanent, draw a card. So say you had a clue that you was going to sack and you don't have the mana to pay. You attack, you can destroy the artifact, draw a card for the free skis. 4 mana, 3/4. Not something to write home about. I'll put it at a 3. It's playable. The sorcery part is kind of cool. For 2 mana, you can potentially ramp in green blue. Cool. But I don't know if this is gonna get to 3.25 for me. It could, but I think the mana cost is holding it back. If this was just 3 mana, I would say this is 3.25 to 3.5. But at the mana cost is at, it's just like meh. I'm okay running it, happy running it, but it's not like overly exciting to Clinton. Next, we have Judith Carnage Connoisseur. It's a 5 mana, 3 generic, 3 generic, a black and a red. Legendary creature shaman, rare. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, choose one. That spell gains Death Touch and Lifelink. Ooh. Ooh. So your shocks gain Death Touch and Lifelink. Or create a 2/2 red imp token with when this creature dies, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. This is a 3/4. So I don't like the 5 mana spells. I keep saying I don't like when a spell gets to 5 mana. But this is nice. I'm putting it at 2.75. It needs help. It needs a little help. But the right player is gonna make someone absolutely just devastated. I'm gonna shock you and I'm gonna gain 2 life. Huh? Yeah, I'm gonna shock you 6/6. I'm gonna gain 2 life and your creature's gonna die. What? Yeah. That's beautiful. I would love. I'll at least want to try out Judith Carnage Connoisseur, but at 5 mana, it's definitely a build around in late game. Next, we have Aurelia, the Law Above, 5 mana, 3 generic, a red and a white, legendary creature angel with flying, haste, and vigilance. Whenever a player attacks with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card. So even your opponent, if they attack with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card. Whenever a player attacks with 5 or more creatures, Aurelia, the Law Above, deals 3 damage to each of your opponents, and you gain 3 life. It's a 4/4, so a 5 mana 4/4 flying vigilant haste, I gotta put this at 2.75. It needs the support. It's just about there. I think there's gonna be other cards that I see that are cheaper, more efficient. That I'm be like, yeah, I'm gonna grab this over it because I don't want too many freaking five drops. If this was like one mana less, I would probably slide it immediately to a 3.25 or higher. But a five mana card, and even though it has flying vigilance and haste, it can be easily blocked or whatnot. So yeah, I got to give it a 2.75. But I'm excited to see Aurelia, the law above, at work. Mm. All right. So next is Blood Spatter Analysis, a black and a red enchantment. When Blood Spatter Analysis ETBs, it deals 3 damage to target creature an opponent controls. Whenever one or more creatures die, mill a card and put a Bloodstain counter on Blood Spatter Analysis. Then sacrifice it if it has 5 or more Bloodstain counters on it. When you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Hmm. 3 damage to target creature is not bad, and this has replayability because it's an enchantment. Um, I don't want to mill a card myself, but this after enough creature dies, this returns a random creature from the yard, well, a creature you want from your graveyard to your hand. No, not to the hand. So 2 mana, deal 3 with some upside. I'm gonna give it a 2.5. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 2.5. Next, we have Doppelgang. It is a X generic, 3X generic, green and blue sorcery. For each of X target permanent, create X tokens that are copies of that permanent. So for 5 mana, I can copy your biggest threat. For 8 mana, I can copy. Huh. Is this scaling weirdly? So say you have two creatures on board. If I pay 8 mana, I can choose two targets, and I make a copy of each of those targets twice. Am I understanding this right? Granted, this is terrible and limited. I'm not shooting for 5 and 8 mana off rip. But this is interesting now. Especially if you have like instant sorceries cost X less to cast. The Lord. I gotta put this as a zero for now. Zero it's hard to say it's a one. It's a one based off of 5 mana. You can copy something that's the best. If you get up there, it can go higher, but by itself, it's doing absolutely nothing. And if it's by itself doing nothing, I can't really respect it. I mean, you can choose lands too, I guess. Uh, I'm gonna give it a one. I won't say it's total zero, but I'll give it a one. Next, we have Drag the Canal, a blue and a black. Create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. If a creature died this turn, you gain 2 life, surveil 2, then investigate. What? So for instant speed, I can just boom. I'm gonna create a creature. I love that. And then if creature died this turn, I gain 2 life, surveil 2, and investigate. So I have the potential to draw a card. I'm gonna put this. This got to be a 2.75. No, I'm gonna put it at 3. I'm gonna put it at 3. I can play this pretty much anytime. I'll run 3 copies of this, 4 copies, five, six. Cause and then I might get to play it again. Who knows? I'm gonna put it at a 3. I think Drag the Canal is really solid. It gives you a lot of abilities for really really cheap. Next we have something tried and true, Assassin's Trophy. Black and a green instant, destroy target permanent an opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for basic land, put on the battlefield, and shuffle. This is really like just a slam dunk removal spell. I'm gonna put it at like 4.5. It probably is a 5. It's so cheap, so efficient. Yeah, they get a land, but you get to destroy like the best thing. You're not gonna want to waste this on something cheap and useless. You're gonna want to target their best thing, but it targets any permanent. I'm gonna put this at 4.75. I think it really scales up to a 5. I think you really want that in all of your green black bills, no questions. Next, we have War Leader's Call. It is a 3 mana, 1 generic, a red and a white. Creatures you control get 1 1. Whenever a creature ETBs, War, War Leader's Call deals 1 damage to each opponent. 3 mana, 1 1. 3 mana enchantment that gives all your creatures 1 1, so it gives them an anthem. And whenever you play a creature, you deal a damage to the opponent. I can see this being like a 2. Immediately, it pumps your board for the long term. And then whenever you play creatures, you're just pinging them out. I think this is honestly like a 2.5. I really like War Leader's Call. It's looking solid. Next, we have Relive the Past. 7 mana, 5 generic, a green and a white. Sorcery, return up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target land, and up to 1 target non aura enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. They are 5/5 elemental creatures in addition to their other types. So for 7 mana, how much you're bringing up? One, two, three, 15 power to the board. Potentially, potentially, you gotta have those things in the yard. I'm gonna say this is a 1. It's overcosted. You gotta have all the right conditions to bring it up to a 3. If I mean, you play this, it's instantly like, okay, cool. You're probably gonna win the game. It's probably like a 3.5, 4. But to get to 7 mana and have all three of those types in your yard is a setup. I'm gonna put this at a 2, even at though it's at 7 mana. I think that's really cool. If someone plays it against me and get it to go off, I'm gonna be really hype. That's exciting. All right. Now we have Breakout, a red and a green. Look at the top six cards of your wait. Look at the top six cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them. If that card has mana value 2 or less, you may put it onto the battlefield. It gains haste until end of turn. If you didn't put the reveal card onto the battlefield this way, put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is a sorcery. With enough good low cost red or green cards, I'll run all of these pretty much. Like, it's not something that wins the game on its own. I'm gonna put it at 2.5. But I think this card is solid. You go 6 cards deep, find a card you want, and you can put it straight to the battlefield. A lot of times these search up cards want to put it in your hand, but if you really need one of your big butt creatures, you can pull that to your hand too. I like that a lot. I'm gonna give this a 2.5. It's probably just a 2, but when it comes to like just value, I think it's solid. Next, we have Coerce to Kill, 5 mana, 3 generic, a blue and a black enchant creature. You control enchanted creature. Ooh, enchanted creature has base power and toughness 1 1, has death touch, and is an assassin in addition to his other types. Blue black, you really want us to do some controlling. We talked about the other card that takes the cards away from him. This is another card that takes him away. 5 mana removal spell. I'm not such a big fan of, but this is really fun. I'm gonna put this at a 2 because of 5 mana. If it was any less, it would be a 2.5 or 3. I don't necessarily like that it turns the creature into a 1/1 for you, but at least it has Death Touch. Next, we have 10 Street Gossip, a 4 mana, 2 generic, a red and a green creature, Viashino Advisor, uncommon, vigilance. You can tap, add a red and green, spend this mana only to cast face down spells or turn creatures face up. It's a 4/4. So a 4 mana 4/4 is solid. 3. I'm gonna put that at a 3. It has vigilance, even better. Put that at 3.25. And it ramps. So you play this on turn 4. It helps you flip your disguise creatures, so it supports. I'm gonna keep it at 3.25, but this card is really good. I think we're gonna see a lot of via 10 Street Gossip. Clearly, my voice is getting tired. I done gone through so many cards today. Next, we have Insidious Roots, black and a red, enchantment, uncommon. Creature tokens you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. This turns your clue tokens into ramp. This turns your clue tokens into ramp. Whenever one or more creature cards leaves your graveyard, create a 0/1 plant creature and put 1/1 counter on it for each plant you control. This could work for collect evidence. I don't see that being so relevant, but this could turn your clues into ramp. But I think there's a lot of build up around that. I'm not too excited about it in limited. And by itself, it does nothing. I'm gonna have to put this at 0, even though I think some people are gonna play it, and I think some people are gonna do something with it. I don't think I'm ever gonna pick this card for myself to play. It may be a 1 for collect decks. I would have to see this play and win for me to put Insidious Root at a 1 rating, at least, and that's being generous. Next, we have Wisp Drinker Vampire, 4 mana, 2 generic, a white and a black. Vampire Rogue with flying. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less ETBs under your control, each opponent loses a life, you gain a life. You can pay 7, 5 generic, a white and a black. Creatures you control with power 2 or less gain Death Touch and lifelink until end of turn. It's a 2/4. So a 4 mana 2/4, not anything to write home about. You have to play 2 creatures with power 2 or less to get the ability for the lifelink or for the drain. And then you have to have 7 mana. I'm going to rate this a 3. I like flyers. 4 mana 2/4 flyers okay to me. I'll probably play it in most instances. But the rest of the text, I don't know how often that's going to come into play. And that's why I'm just going to say this is playable. You can run a few of them. But it might actually be like a 2.75 because it's just not easy to jam to the board. I'm going to leave it at 2.75. Next, we have Rune Brand Juggler. It's a black and a red creature human shaman. Uncommon. When an ETB, suspect up to 1 target creature you control, and you can pay 5, 3 generic, a black and a red. Sacrifice the suspected creature. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. This is a 2/2. So 2 mana 2/2 that gives one of your creatures menace that can potentially -5 something for 5 later on. I think this scales up great. This is a 3.25 for me. Nah, maybe it's just a 3, so you gotta have the right condition. So it can sack itself though for 5. 2. Get out, blocks for you or attacks for you, and then for 5 mana. Still, I think it's a little too oomph. I'm gonna give it a 3 simply off of being a 2 mana 2/2 menace, and it can scale up based off of its removal ability. Next, we have Detective Satchel, 4 mana 2 generic, a blue and a red. Whenever ETBs investigate twice, you can tap it, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter. Activate only if you sacrifice an artifact this turn. I'm gonna put that at a 1. It's not too much to explain. You gotta have enough to keep sacking, and all you're getting is 1/1 tokens off of it, which is okay, but not exciting. Next, we have Evidence Examiner, a green and a blue creature, Merfolk Detective. Uncommon. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may collect evidence 4. Whenever you collect evidence, investigate. It's a 2/2, so it's a bear. I'm gonna put it at 2.5. It's solid. You can swing in with it, but it's not anything to write home about. You can collect evidence with it and investigate, which is cool, but I'm not even a big fan of collect evidence. Next, we have Soul Search, a white and a black sorcery. Uncommon. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. Exile that card if the card's mana value is 1 or less. Create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. I'm becoming a bigger and bigger fan of these look into the opponent's hand and make them discard a card or exile a card. That's really strong, especially early game. I'm going to give this a 2.5. This could be a 2.75, but still, it's not something I have to pick. I have to play. It's something I'm just like, okay, cool. I'll run that. Next, we have Repulsive Mutation. X, green and a blue, instant, put X 1/1 counters on target creature you control. Then counter up to 1 target spell unless its controller pays mana equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. This is solid. I'm going to put it at 2.5. I think this is really good though. It needs support. But you're running your green blue deck. They try to fight. They try to do anything. You're putting counters on something and countering their spell. I think this could scale up real easy. I'm gonna put it at 2.5. I think it's a really good card. How many we have left? Three, four. Jesus, there's a lot left. Next we have Private Eye, a 3 mana, one generic, a white and a blue. Detective, uncommon. Other detectives get 1/1. And then whenever you draw your second card each turn, target detective can't be blocked. 3 mana, 3/3. I'm gonna put this at 3.25. This is uncommon. Say you get two of these, they're pumping each other, so you have 3 mana, 4/4s. You get three of these. You have 3 mana, 5/5s. These scale up so easily. Then if you happen to draw cards, they become unblockable. This is a 3.25 that easily scales up for me based off of how you build with it. By itself, I guess it's just a 3. By itself, it's a 3. As you multiply the copies in your build, I think it goes up. Next, we have Buried in the Garden. 4 mana, 2 generic, a red and a white. I'm definitely tired. 2 mana, a green and a white aura. Uncommon, enchant land. When the ETBs exile target non-land permanent you don't control until Buried in the Garden leaves the battlefield. When enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 1 mana of any color. A 4 mana ramp spell? That's kind of boo boo. But, I mean, it does exile target non-land permanent you don't control for 4. That's really good. I think this is 3.5. In most cases, this is going to take care of any problem you have, and it's going to ramp you a little bit. Yeah, I'll put it at 3.5. Next, we have No More Lies, a white and a blue, instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. If the spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. Okay, I'll give that a 2.5. Counter spells get a lower rating to me because it gotta have the right moment. It's not always going to be there, and it's not going to attack for you. Next, we have Crawl Whipcracker, a black and a green, insect assassin, uncommon, with reach. ETBs destroy target token an opponent controls. It's a 3/2. Okay, put this at 3.25. In most cases, I'll run as many of these as I can. 2 mana, 3/2 is solid. It's going to beat in really nice. Has reach so it can block for them if I need. Then if they have an artifact that I don't like, or a clue token that was going to draw them a card, I can just blow it up. Nice. Next we have Sumala Sentry, a green and a white elf archer with reach, uncommon. Whenever a face down permanent you control is turned face up, put a 1/1 counter on it and a 1/1 counter on the sentry. This is solid. This is going to go in your disguise deck. It needs some support. I'm going to put it at 2.75. It just simply because it needs support, because a 1/3 with reach by itself is nothing to write home about. Next we have Deadly Complication, a 3 mana, 1 generic, black and a red sorcery. Common, no, uncommon. Choose one or both. Destroy target creature. Okay. Put a 1/1 counter on target suspect creature you control. You may have it become no longer suspected. I like that a lot. 3 mana, blow up something. That's easily a 4 for me. Easily, just boom. Then put a 1/1 counter on target suspected creature. Just because. Okay. The fact that it's no longer suspected is something I don't necessarily like. Because I do like that menace part. But this would be good, like, trying to defend yourself. If you couldn't block before, now you can. I'm going to put it at 4 simply off that destroy target creature. I hope I said the other green-white card was 4. Buried in the Garden. I think the mana cost is what got it to a 3.5 if I did say that. Next we have Curious Cadaver. 4 mana, 2 generic, a blue and a black. Zombie Detective, uncommon, flyer. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, return it from the graveyard to your hand. It's a 3/1. 2.75. And that's because of the mana cost. The ability is great, but you gotta have that support. And a 4 mana 3/1 is just not exciting. I'll put it at 2.5 actually. Meddling Youths. 5 mana, 3 generic, a red and a white. Creature, human, detective, uncommon. Haste. Whenever you attack with three or more creatures, investigate. It's a 4/5. I'll put it at a 2. I'm just not a fan of these 5 mana cards, and you gotta have three or more creatures for it to really get that value. It can be wild out easily. Big 2 for Clinton. Next, we have Lightning Helix, a red and a white. Instant, deals 3 damage to any target you gain 3 life. That's a 4 for me. You can target their face. You gain life, they lose life. I'll run. If I get 3, 4 of these, I'm happy. Say I get 4 of these. That is 20. That's 24. No. Yeah. Because 3 times 4 is 12. They lose 12 life. I gain 12 life. That's 24 life in my favor off of 4 cards. Love it. I'm giving it a 4. I think it actually scales up based off of the player. Next, we have Crowd Control Warden. 5 mana, 3 generic, and a green and a white. Centaur Soldier. That's getting into the common cards. Okay. So, we finally made it. Oh, well, I guess I could go over the commons as well in the multicolors. Let me finish that out. 5 mana, 3 generic, a green and a white. As the ETBs or his turn face up, put X 1/1 counters on it, where X is the number of other creatures you control. Disguise 5. 5 mana 4/4. I'll leave it at a 2. It's just not exciting. It can flip and put counters on it where X is the number of creatures you control, but you gotta have something to help support it. Next is Sanguine Savior, a 3 mana, 1 generic, white, and a black. Vampire Cleric, common, flyer lifelink, okay. With disguise 2, okay. When its turn face up, another target creature you control gains lifelink until end of turn. I'll put this at 3. I'll run all these. Flying lifelink 2/1. 2/1's not exciting. It gets blocked out easy, but the fact that it naturally has lifelink is really, really nice. I'm gonna put it at a 3. I'll probably always want to play it. Pump spells or any kind of interaction is gonna take it up even higher. Next, we have Rakish Scoundrel. 4 mana, 2 generic, a black and a green. Elf Rogue with Death Touch, ETBs, or his turn face up. Target creature gains indestructible. Ooh. Disguise 6 is a 3/3. So a 4 mana 3/3. Not exciting, but it has Death Touch. I'm gonna put it at a 3, and I think it scales up based off of disguise, even though that is expensive. It can potentially be a very expensive combat trick. I'm gonna leave it at 3. Next, we have Granite Witness, a 4 mana, 2 generic, a white, and a blue. Gargoyle Detective with Flying and Vigilance, disguise 2. When its turn face up, you may tap or untap target creature. 4 mana, 3/2 flyer. Nothing to write home about. I'll put it at 2.5. Uncover Crocdelf, 6 mana, 4 generic, green and blue. Crocodile Detective. When it deals combat damage to a player, investigate. And it can disguise 5 as a 5/5. You know kind of where that leaving it at. Based off of my stats before, I'm leaving it at a 2. Shady Informant, 5 mana, 3 generic, a black and a red. Ogre Rogue. When it dies, deal 2 damage to any target. Disguise 4. That's pretty cheap. You can play it on turn 3 and then flip it over on turn 4. And it's a 4/2, so a 5 mana 4/2. I'm going to have to leave that at a 2 as well. Fairy Snoop, 3 mana, 1 generic, a blue and a black. Flyer with disguise 3. When it's turn face up, look at top 2 cards of your library. Put one in your hand, the other into your graveyard. 3 mana, 1/4 flyer. I'm gonna put this at 2.75. I'm starting to rate, like the common cards, I'm kind of rating a little bit lower based off abilities and whatnot. You can play this for 3 and then flip it up for 3. That's a lot just to draw 1 card. That's 6 mana to draw 1 card. I don't know if I like that. I'm going to give it a 2.5. 3 mana, 1/4. You know what? There's a possible chance I might run multiple copies of this. I'm going to give it a 3. It's not that bad. 3 mana, 1/4 flyer. It's going to block well for you. It's going to attack when you need it. And it can potentially find you a card. I'm going to put it at a 3. We have Dog Walker, red and a white. Human Citizen with Vigilance, disguise 2, another cheap disguise. Whenever it's turn face up, create two 1/1 dogs. I like this. You play this on turn 3. The next turn, you're getting a 3/1 with two white dogs. I'm going to put this at 3 as well. And it's Vigilant. This might be a 3.25. This might be a little sleeper for red white. This is not bad. A lot of mana that goes into it, but you generate a lot of tokens. I'm going to leave it at 3 for now. Next we have Gadget Technician, 4 mana, 2 generic, a blue and a red. When it ETBs or is turn face up, create a 1/1 colorless Doctor artifact, creature token with flying, disguise for 2. That's another cheap disguise, and it's a 3/2. 4 mana 3/2 is nothing to write home about. I'm going to put it at 2. Even though you can play it for 3 and then flip it, it only generates you the 1 token. A 4 mana 3/2 that makes you 1 token is still kind of like meh. Gotta leave it at 2. Ooh. We got a few more here. They're not double face cards, they're split cards. I'm gonna have to read them from the side. So we got Push Pull. Push is a 2 mana, 1 generic, a hybrid white and black. Destroy target tap creature. Sorcery. I don't like that it's sorcery, but I like that. And it also has Pull. Put up to 1. It's a 6 mana card, 4 generic, a black and red hybrid. Put up to 2 target creature cards from a single graveyard onto your battlefield. They gain haste. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. That could be game winning. So this is a blow up card and a bring back card. I love that it has 2 abilities on it. It encourages to play black red. I'm going to put this at 3.5. This destroys target tap creature. So boom, it's taking out pretty much anything that attacked you. You don't get to stop it instantly. That's what's keeping it from being just a straight up 4. If this was instant speed, boom. But then you also have this other side at 6, which is pretty expensive. You don't know if you're always going to get there. That could be game winning as well. So I'm going to leave Push Pull at a 3.5, and it may scale up. Next we have Hustle Bustle. Hustle is a 1 mana, a blue red hybrid. Target creature attacks or blocks this turn if able. And then we have Bustle, 6 mana, 4 generic, 2 green red hybrids. Creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. You may turn a creature you control face up. Now one thing I gotta remember with these double-sided cards, I think you can only choose one side to play. You can either do this or that. I don't know now if you can do both, if you can be like, okay, I'm going to play push pull, that's going to take the card up even higher, but it's going to be really expensive. So if I said this was a 3.5, if you can play this for 8 mana and get all the ability, it could easily go up to 3.75. This card, I don't like it too much. I think it's like a 2. Target creature attacks or blocks, you got to have something for that. And even the second part of pumping and flipping the creature is really expensive. I'm going to leave that at a 2. Next we have Cease Desist. Cease is a 2 mana, 1 generic, a black and green hybrid. You can exile 2 target cards from a single graveyard. Target player gains 2 life and draws a card. Okay? Or you can, for 6, 4 generic, 2 green white hybrid, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. I'm going to leave this at a 1. This is very underwhelming. It's not doing much for me in most situations. Next we have Fuss Bother. And with these ratings, I'm rating them as a whole together. If one side's good, it's just a good card. Even if the other side is bad, it's like, well, this side is good and the other side is bad. If I ever use it in any situation, that's better than nothing. Next we have Fuss Bother. Fuss is a 3 mana, 2 generic, and white red hybrid. It's an instant. You can put a 1/1 counter on each attacking creature you control. It's pretty good. Now on the other side, for 6, 4 generic, a white and blue hybrid pip, 2 white blue hybrid pips. Create 3 1/1 colors artifact tokens, and then you can surveil 2. So for 6, you can make 3 tokens. It's not that great. This takes a lot of support. I'm going to leave it at a 2, but I think somebody with a good build can scale it up. Next we have Flotsam. and Jetsam. Oh, is this? Yeah, Flotsam and Jetsam. Flotsam is a 2 mana, one generic, a green blue hybrid, mill, well, instant. Mill three cards and investigate. Jetsam is a 6 mana, 4 generic, a blue black hybrid, 2 pips. Sorcery. Each opponent mills 3 cards, then you may cast a spell from each opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If a spell cast this way would be put in the graveyard, exile it instead. So for 6 mana, you get to play anything you want from the opponent's graveyard. 6 mana is still costly, so I don't know how much I like that. And I don't like milling myself with Millstrom either. I'm going to have to leave this at a 2. I think some people can play it and be happy. So overall, I think the multicolored cards are really excellent. I think off rip white black, white blue, white black and white blue is really what stands out to me because in my mind I'm already like cool. I can kind of consider Esper builds. I haven't gone over the lands yet, but if the lands are landing for me, I can consider, a white blue deck that has a lot of good creatures. I consider a white black deck that has a lot of good creatures and potentially Kaya. Um, White green looks solid. I didn't see a lot of things that I would necessarily want to play with. And green has a lot of power, but I think it's probably right after white black and let's see, white black and white blue. Blue black has a few pieces too. That's why I was saying with blue. Blue has a lot of oomph. That I'm just like I like this. So for me, it's like right now I think it's white black into. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. White black into white blue into kind of like either blue black or white green. But then you got pieces like a knockout card like Ansrog that's really solid that can win games on their own. So it's like encouraging red green. But then you also have what was another card here, red white. Red white didn't have a lot of cards. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. But this one right here was just like by itself. It encourages red white so strong. Now, one thing I am hearing come out my mouth a lot. I think white's gonna end up being the most played color, regardless of what it's matched with. White has some of the best creatures, in my opinion, by themselves on the board. White splashes into some of the best colors. I think white black, and like I said, white blue, and even this white red card. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of white cards drafted, a lot of color paired with white this season, especially depending on how the artifacts and lands look. So yeah, so I just went over I think we went over what, red today, green today, all of the multicolors. Next time I'm gonna run multicolors by themselves. They took forever. They took forever. Next time I'm gonna go over the artifacts and potentially the lands. So if you enjoy my content, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. I hope this has been an educational session for you. Hope it helps you with your limited playing going forward for the season, take you some dubs. And if you do happen to win some games off of this advice, please come back to the video and let me know. As always, you guys are fantastic. My name is Mr. Clintastik. I'll see you guys next time.